Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother, Dagan Moriarty, in his Smith shirt. Love it. How are you, my friend?
A meeting of the minds, and I'm here too. What's up, fellas?
That's right. That's right. Good to see you, my friend.
This is quite the crew. This is an intimidating bunch.
This is a really interesting, Micah actually said it. It's kind of like the old heads.
Yes.
And
this is the elder council, yeah. It's the OG talk. Yeah.
And I'm the youngest of the group, I think.
You are.
So,
yes.
Which is interesting because I'm used to being the older one. That's where me calling Chris and Dustin my sons comes from.
Right.
On Sacred Symbols, because I'm so much older than them. But now we're here and we get everyone, all the old guys together. And I'm very excited about this. Dave, good to see you.
Good to see you.
The Lord Cognito, my friend. How are you today?
Colin, man, I'm good, man. I'm good. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, man. I'm excited about these topics specifically. And then we got my man Gene in the building. Oh, man, this is going to be a good one. I can't wait. I got thoughts. No
doubt. Welcome, my friend. And Gene Park from the Washington Post. Welcome back. You are the only, as far as I understand, the second guest, like outside of the family in quotes, that we've had, and the first return guest in that small group. But we're kind of considering you now, Gene, part of the family. In fact, you have your mic set up there that we provided you with just because we want to have you on much more often. So welcome back to the show, my friend.
Yeah. I would be remiss to not thank LSM LLC for this wonderful contribution for this whole setup. It sounds all great. Good. I just wanted to catch up and get up on your level,
Well, we wanted to have you, we know you were having some mic problems. We know we want to have you on the show more often, not only Constellation, but also on Sacred and Duke. And in addition, we love you. And we want to hear.
Oh, thank you. Welcome. Thank you. It is funny to be on Constellation because I've always defended Sacred Symbols as like a show that's 95% about video games.
Yeah.
And here I am mostly on a show that's not about video games at all.
This show has become kind of a small phenomenon in our audience. It's been pretty cool and it's been humbling because I did not anticipate that at all. We thought we were going to do it just twice a month, but now we're doing it every week. So Gene, how's your health? How's everything going with you? I know you were just coming back from an appointment, right?
Yeah. I just got unplugged from a chemotherapy. It sounds disgusting, but yeah, it's true. But I am at pretty much the tail end of my treatment. At the last week of March would be my final treatment, and hopefully never again.
Nice.
A health update for anyone who's been following me. I've had several very detailed DNA tests where they really check for tumor DNA within my bloodstream, and it's been negative twice in a row.
Awesome.
Sweet.
My oncologist says the chance of recurrence is now very, 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 very small. He emphasized that it's very, 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 very small. So I'm like,
right on, man. We're glad you're back. Congratulations to you. We're all thrilled. And speaking of those coming back, we're also thrilled for our friend Rick Hogue, who's on the way back from his stroke. Actually, Cog and I just did, it was fun, a trivia show to raise money for him last weekend. I won. No big deal. Cog came in second. But we had a great last stand showing at that. And
yes.
So he's the next person outside of the family, but in the family that I think we should bring in when he starts to get healthier. I don't know if he'd be comfortable doing it yet, but welcome all. Good to see all of your bright, smiling faces today. Dagan and I, before the show, were talking about how our dad just randomly got married.
You're doing it.
Yeah, and so my dad's been with the same woman for 15 years, so it's not like a big deal. But I was saying that I thought my dad was already married. When he called me, I was like, I really thought you were already married, so congratulations to you, my friend. But he just wants to extract the gift. And I'm getting, so our sister's getting married in May, and then I'm getting married in October. Right. Is he trying to stunt on us a little bit?
I think he is stealing your thunder a little bit.
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Dad is outside right now. Man.
Interesting. Yeah. It's like, I don't know if he was trying to say something or do something. But we're happy for him as well. We know he's a listener, and we also know his brother, Uncle Michael, is a listener too. Sorry about that Amp Arbor story.
Sorry, we're not sorry, Uncle Mike. The statute of limitations has passed. We need to break the ice for May and then November. You know what I mean? Let's roll in with that kind of energy, love. forgiveness.
Yeah, Dagan told, for those that are unaware, and of course our two guests here probably don't know, Dagan told a story in our embarrassing stories segment last episode about how he pissed his pants at a family event as an adult on accident in the bathroom, like when he was just peeing all over himself and not realizing it wasn't going in the toilet.
It was bad.
And all of the, so when my dad called, because what we were saying was and we said this to Cog, our dad doesn't text. So when he texted both of us to call him back, and I thought he was like dying or something. I don't know what that was all about. Although I said, I think my dad's probably immortal. We're going to find out as time goes on. But no, it was just that he got married, but Dagan thought that he was calling because he heard the story about what happened at Aunt Barbara's house.
I didn't sleep for 2 nights after. That was my first podcasting experience in 5 or 6 years where I was like, I might have crossed the line. By telling that story. I was uncomfortable. And then I was like, ultimately I was like, you know what? So be it. It's a funny story. Hopefully, it was literally, 2.5 decades ago. Maybe we could,
I love
maybe it was time.
Self-deprecating, man. I love it.
I like self-deprecating.
Me too.
But I thought I was in trouble. So him getting married was fantastic.
You mean to say that on Constellation, there's a story about Dagan pissing his pants and also Colin shitting in the shower?
Yeah, that's right. That's a different episode, but that was
back-to-back episodes, I think.
Exactly,
yeah.
And to be clear, I wasn't brown shitting in the shower.
Yeah, no. I know. I
just want to make sure everyone understands that.
Trust me, as someone who had to go through 2 colonoscopies in the past year.
Oh, yeah.
You might as well just let it go, my friend. That's all I'm trying to say at some point.
That is what happens because you can't help it. It just happens.
Right.
Yeah, and I love the different, Gene, isn't it funny? Like they give you the different layers of laxatives. It's like you're going to take this laxative at this time. Then the next hour, you're going to take this laxative. Then the next hour, you're going to take this laxative. Then the next, it's like, are you? And they're all different. And in my experience, they were all different brands. And then they'd be like, in between, drink Gatorade. Like,
just drink a tank of Gatorade. It's just insane. It's like that's all you can have. It's insane. I hate it. I still have to go through one again, like later this year again.
I should go through it. I haven't been.
Well, you already got one checked, so I think that'll get you good for a few years. I think.
Yeah. I try to go a few years at a time. My stomach's all fucked up.
Is that what it is? Every few years, is that supposed to be the rhythm?
Well, when you get older,
once you hit a certain age.
The guidance is when you're older. Right now, the guidance is 45. It used to be 50, but I think they're lowering that to 45, and I think they're even thinking about lowering it to 40, which was my age when I got diagnosed. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And they have the various tests now that you can like send away to like early screening tests, which are pretty. Like I see them during football, where you could like colon cancer screening. So like you can just poop in a vial basically and send it off to this thing, and they'll just, which is kind of like that's great. Because I mean, I think it's very intrusive. Like when I used to, it's the drugs are the best. The endoscopies are awful too. I've done both many times. But back in the day, it was like barium enemas, like shit that was even worse. When I had a barium enema in the 90s. It's horrible, dude. I mean, I'd much rather be knocked out and have a tube stuck up my ass, to be honest with you. And frankly, you don't even have to knock me out. All right. Let's get into the topics here, my friend. Oh, this is Gene's email about you weren't late, Gene, so no worries about that. Mm-hmm. All right, my friend. See, we have some good topics this week. I'm looking at them now. I don't even know where I want to begin. Let's start with you, Gene. We haven't heard from you in a while. Welcome back to the show, and let's start with your topic here. See what you have to say.
Yeah, well, my topic today's St. Patrick's Day, right?
It is when we're recording. It is St. Patrick's Day. That is
when
true.
We're recording. It's St. Patrick's Day, so we're going to talk a little bit about a little greenery. My topic today is weed in general, but it's something that I wanted to talk to you, Colin, about specifically because I know that you are aficionado of the MJ, and just really want to just get people's feelings and history on it. I'm sure there's a lot of funny stories that can be told about it. For me personally, I first smoked weed in high school. But this was on Guam, and Guam has like the skunkiest weed. Like it's just like it's not even green; it was brown. It was terrible, and I barely felt anything. But the first time I smoked weed, we went to a rundown hospital. It was a former mental institution, so we thought that we would see ghosts. And then a bunch of white dogs were there. And then so we got in our car and then they started chasing us. I don't know if this was real or not. This happened like 30 years ago at this point. I'm not even sure if I'm telling a real story, but I vividly remember being chased by white dogs in a mental institution. And the first time I got high. And I was like, I kind of don't want to do this again. But I didn't really get into weed until I finally moved to California for college. And I started getting the good shit, I started actually caring about the orange Kush, the purple Kush, the Afghan bombs, back in the day, because I was growing up Kush. In 2001, 2003. So, that's what they would call it. And, a lot of stuff from Northern California as well. And I really, really started to appreciate it. I started hanging out with a bunch of skaters. That's all we would do. We just smoke a shit ton of weed, play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, GoldenEye, watch skate videos, and just trip out on like these amazing, things. I used to drive around in like the rich neighborhoods in California too, super high, and just being like, how could that door be that big? How could why would you need a door that big?
Right, right.
And like just
4 times the size of an average door.
Exactly. Like, this is Orange County, California. So like, it's just McMansion. Like, it's not even McMansion because McMansion implies that mansion doesn't belong there. But it's just like all of these huge houses in Orange County that I used to drive around and just listen to Wu-Tang Clan all day.
Nice.
Yeah, that's it. But then it wasn't even a daily habit until I started working, And so now I just smoke weed every day. I do, It's good for my health right now, obviously with the cancer treatment, with chemotherapy. Chemotherapy just knocks the hell out of your appetite. So my doctor recommended you should be smoking or you should be ingesting some kind of weed to help with that. It helps with nausea. So it's great. And I don't know, like there's also a lot going on with like how I always used to get in trouble for weed in college. I almost got kicked out of school because I basically got caught for weed. The RA, the resident advisor in my dorm room, smelled it, and it was coming from me and my roommates. And when the cops came, I had the weed in my pants, and I said, "Hey, I just need a drink of water." And I just opened the fridge to cover my entire body, and I threw the weed into I threw the weed into like an ice cream sandwich like box where they just would never look. And then they searched me, and they didn't find anything, but they definitely smelled it. And then they looked at my Palestinian roommate, who has a lazy eye, and he's on the basketball team. And
good description.
And I just kept playing. I played on my Asian studentness. I was just studying math, man. But that's it. And then the cops looked at my Palestinian roommate, and they like searched the hell out of him. They like flashed his eyes and everything like that. And he was a homeboy. He stayed quiet. He just looked at me. He was like, "You fucking owe me for this, man."
He ain't tell.
Yeah. He wasn't a snitch. Like he get this because he knew that he would be totally safe. Like they fucking drug tested him, and they didn't drug test me.
Oh wow.
And then they piss tested him. The school did. And they found nothing, because he doesn't smoke. He didn't even drink alcohol, like he was on the basketball team, so he's trying to stay healthy, But I did take him out to a nice steak dinner afterwards, like this is in college, so I took him out to like a Morton's, so it's like for a college kid, that's pretty fancy for
good stuff.
It's good stuff. So I made sure that I took care of him, But after they found out that he was totally clean, they realized that it was actually me. And then I got called into the dean's office, and they said, "We don't have any proof that you were smoking weed, so we can't really do anything. But just watch out." And I was like, "Fuck you guys," So that's when I started driving around Orange County because I was like, okay, well, I guess I can't smoke weed in dorms anymore, so I'm just gonna go in my car and just chamber, as we used to call in Guam. I understand that it's called hotboxing the mainland.
Yeah, boxing out.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. But in Guam, we used to call it chamber. We used to just chamber out and just hang out in the car and just hotbox it, right? And that's when I started to drive around. And then I moved to Guam, and I actually, again, I had to smoke the skunk weed, but that's when I was starting to do harder drugs instead. And then when I finally moved to Hawaii in 2006. That's when, I was like, okay, I'm re-exposed again to good weed because this is Hawaii, it's the Pineapple Express that they made a whole movie about how good the weed in Hawaii is. And it's interesting because weed is still illegal in Hawaii, except for medical purposes.
Oh, is it really?
But yeah, I would still get caught there, but then I would offer the cops weed and they would just smoke with me and it would just all be good.
That's awesome.
Because nobody actually gives a shit. Nobody actually gave a shit except for my neighbors, and this is the we can talk about this later too. But my neighbors always ratted me out. It was always white women. It was always white women.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Why?
They always like I was a druggie and and I was a druggie. I'm not denying that.
They were correct.
You were correct, but I was not I was also selling too. Like don't get me wrong, I was also moving product too.
Yeah.
Eventually, I was a mule for weed and for other products as well.
Wow, you're such an interesting person. You're like the Anthony Bourdain of the video game industry.
Yeah,
you have a lot of like these really interesting stories, like this interesting background. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I always looked up to Bourdain. He's friends with a lot of friends of mine, and then a lot of people have said that too. They're like you and Anthony have a lot of comment because like you guys really seem to be open to different experiences and try to be worldly people, even though he's done a lot more traveling than I have.
R.I.P. He is deceased now.
Rest in peace. It was real rough when I found out that he died, because I was like, man, like I feel like he's kind of a kindred spirit, and I would have loved to meet him myself because he stopped by Hawaii often, and would have been
Kitchen Confidential. Did you read that? If anyone hasn't read his book, Kitchen Confidential is a must-read book.
Yeah, I
haven't read it, but yeah,
absolutely amazing. It's kind of like his autobiography, and it's amazing, and it's a lot. It reminds me of you. Like that book reminds me of like the things you're saying. So it's cool.
Weed has just been in my life, and so now I love playing video games and smoking weed. I actually do not. I actually every time before I game, I have to have a bowl. At least because the interesting thing is that I almost got kicked out of my esports Halo team back in the day because I would always show up drunk to practice, and I was terrible. I was awful. I couldn't throw grenades for shit. I couldn't aim for shit. And then when I started showing up stoned, I was focused. And my grenades were landing perfectly. Like I was getting 2 at a time, kill-taculars anytime,
Double kill.
And double kill at least, each time. I knew the maps well. So when I game and smoke weed, I'm actually really, really focused. We're just coming off the Resident Evil 4 a review cycle. I played through the game 6 times. I was stoned the entire time, and I played through a professional in 5 hours, just on one bowl, powered by one bowl. But
powered by one, it only took one bowl. It's a trademark.
Powered by the Cron, yes.
Yeah, exactly. I am so excited, by the way, because when we're recording this, I think 10 days out from when Resident Evil 4 comes out. So I'm so excited to. Is it a week? It's only 7 days.
It's a week. Just next Friday.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a week. I'm sorry. So I'm so excited to play. Got to pre-order it. I don't like to pre-order games too early because I don't want to send them any signals. But when they get around the time when they preload it, I'm like, all right, fine. It's the same as buying it now. Yeah. But I don't want to give them any funny ideas when I see these games up that are like for pre-order so early. Like, I don't think so, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. The Resident Evil is a different case because like Resident Evil is like my favorite series. So like I pre-ordered the $250 collector's edition from GameStop, which I'm not sure they're actually going to send because there's rumors out there that they're canceling those orders. But whatever. This is a video game podcast, whatever. Yeah,
it doesn't matter. It's an anything you want it to be podcast, and all hail GameCube because it's really having a good showing here early in 2023.
Yeah. The year to GameCube, Metroid Prime and Resident Evil 4.
I always loved it. I'm always going to have my eyes on you revisionists. I remember.
You did.
I remember how you all. I remember how you felt about Nintendo. I remember the things you said about Nintendo. Now I say those things about Nintendo, but I say them now. You were saying them then. What would you used to call Wind Waker? Zelda? Mm-hmm. Remember that? Yes. When you used to call it Zelda?
Yeah.
I remember. I'm going to bring you all to task, but not here, not now. All right. Where do you want to go from here, Gene? Who do you want to kick it over to?
Well, I want to hear from you, Colin, because I understand that you are also an aficionado. So I want to hear your history with MJ, the marijuana.
Yeah, it's funny because I've been smoking weed for so long now that it's comical, and it's been kind of a part of my life. I would say for 2023 for about 20 years now. Yeah, like a daily part of my life. Mm-hmm. And I actually wrote it down because I really love the rapper Currency. I don't know if anyone out there listens to him, but he has a quote: "I should be the weed, don't stop you from smoking" spokesperson, which is an awesome line. And I really feel the way you feel, Gene, is that I can harness marijuana in some way, but But I also understand how it burns you out. I know plenty of burnouts. I'm friends with plenty of burnouts and people that are just like the comic book guy. And I get it. Because I'm like a hair away from that at all times. But the reality is that I'm very motivated and very focused. And I'm very OCD. I know the only thing that would make my anxiety worse than it already is not doing what I need to do to survive. That's just an advantage of my specific kind of anxiety that makes me very productive. Because it's like, oh, at least you don't have to worry about that. You worry about fucking nuclear war and, the moon cracking or whatever. I don't worry about these things, but you can't don't worry about money. Don't worry about any of those things. So it all works into the way I live. But I will say that, and there's so many different things I can say about it, but yeah, I guess I'll start here. I first smoked marijuana in college in a Taco Bell parking lot. I've told the story in the past. Route 112 on Long Island, the Taco Bell there. And I smoked a blunt, which was, and by the way, I love blunts. And I want to just be clear, and we're going to get to that because blunts are a huge part, I think, of smoking weed in New York specifically, and in a lot of other places, but Dutch's. Yeah. But I coughed and I couldn't stop coughing. And I remember my friend's cousin being so mad because it was probably 2000 or 1999, and it was conspicuous. It wasn't like as accepted then, especially in New York. And but from there, I started kind of hanging out with the stoners and smoking a little bit more. And I wrote it down here. I went from seldom to sometimes to often to always, and there are different stages to that. And so the sometimes stage, I think, would be like high school. I'd go to a party, I'd smoke. It wasn't really part. I didn't buy weed at all in my entire life until I was in college. Mm-hmm. And then in college, I became a complete cartoon pothead, just the exact way that you would expect it to go down. But it was a reward for me. And this would surprise a lot of people, but it's true. And I brought this up when we've talked about college in the past, is when I went to Northeastern, I'd actually take morning classes, which is I would take 8 a.m., 9:15, 10:30 classes, those three. And those were usually 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. And that way, and then I was a landscaper at Northeastern, so I would punch in at like 12, and then I would work until 5, or I'd go and write my strategy guides for IGN or do that work. And I'd do my schoolwork, and then 7 o'clock rolls around, Seinfeld's on TV, and I would smoke a blunt, and then I would smoke another blunt, and then I would smoke another blunt, and I was like living with my girlfriend in college at the time for most of that time. And that's the way I smoked. And I just loved blunts, but I kicked blunts probably, after college, but early in my career at IGN, because they're just so bad for you. And it was also honestly hard to get Dutches in California. They smoke, Swisher sweets and things like that in California, which are just different. Yeah. So I don't even know how to break them up. Like, you just learn like this mechanical thing of how to work with a Dutch, and then they give you it's probably like giving you a different gun or something like that. It's like, here's a Glock, here's a Desert Eagle. I don't know. They might be the same. I have no idea. So I wanted to point that out. And I wanted to also say that a big part of it for me was 311, my favorite band. I got my first 311 record in 1996, and I was 12. And I didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. And it actually wasn't important to me. But what was funny is that those songs and those records became more and more relevant until I realized it's like their second record, Grassroots, it's just a zoomed in shot of a weed nug. It's like I didn't even realize that. And then you realize like, oh, this is kind of what they're about, or part of what they're about. And so by the time I went to college, and then I met other 311 fans and would go to see them all the time. I've seen them more than 30 times. It's which is crazy. And a lot of those shows happened only in college. I probably 20 something of those were all in college. And that was part of the culture, smoking weed, boxing out people's cars before the show, passing blunts during the show. And I told a story recently how I went to 311 Day in New Orleans, and a friend that I went with brought an entire ounce of weed on the plane with them. It was after 9/11, so it was just crazy, and he got away with it. And so,
did he put it in a coffee can?
He literally put it in his sock in a bag.
Jesus.
I remember it clear as day, because I was like, I cannot believe this.
Yeah.
Like, he was totally fine with it. I'm like, I'm not telling you shouldn't, because this is gonna be awesome if we get down there with an ounce of weed. And lo and behold, we did. But I feel like the reward aspect of it is something I've always tried to maintain. And I feel like when I started Last Stand, I kind of broke away from that a little bit and started smoking more throughout the day than I ever did, because I'm home. Because typically when I would go to IGN, I'd wake up, I'd work out, I'd get on the train, I'd go to work, I'd get on the train, come home, and then I would smoke. So that would be like 6 or 7 at night. Yeah. And that was just my first opportunity. But I'm rolling out of bed and I'm like, well, here's the bong. Here's some papers. Here's a lot of weed. Do whatever you want. So so I've tried to maintain it where I use it more medicinally. Well, I literally have medical marijuana, but I use it more medicinally and just to like kind of keep my anxiety in check. I try to use different strands. Like I really like sativa, which a lot of people don't. Sativa makes a lot of people really anxious. But I consider sativa like iconic and awesome daytime weed if you just want to be stoned during the day and focused during the day and not worried during the day. Like I really love sativa. And then I get into hybrids and indicas at night, and those are more sleepy time kind of weeds and make you much less anxious. So I buy both and try to balance both. But I realized that I would rather smoke throughout the day than smoke heavily at night, which is what I was doing. And what I've realized is that I smoke way less now. And I've been trying to wind down how much I smoke because I was smoking, I think, too much. I was just getting too comfortable smoking. I didn't need to smoke that much. So I tried to cut it down. But what I find is that I just puff on where is it? It's right here. I puff on my pen all day. I probably go through one of these cartridges every 2 days. And then I probably load a bong up a couple times a day. Because I love my new Rohr bong straight out of Germany. It was awesome. It got shipped. I loved it. It was built there. And it's awesome. It's tempered glass. I've always wanted a really nice bong like that. And then I'll smoke a couple joints a day. But I try to keep the joints later in the day. The kind of the pen use earlier in the day. The bong use is kind of the segue over. And it's a signal to my body. Like my body is so in tune with it. And this is kind of, I don't know if this is too much information, but my body is so in tune with it that when my body registers that I'm done with the day and I like load up a bong or take a first smoke, I often have to put it out and go poop. Because I'm literally so comfortable. Like my body is like, but I will say this, I think this is an important thing before I kick it off because I really want to hear what the other guys have to say. Marijuana is addicting. It's mentally addicting.
It is mentally addicting. Yeah.
And
I would agree with that.
I hate when people say like, I'm not addicted to it. I'm not this or not that. I'm like, obviously I am manifestly addicted to marijuana. I would never deny that at all. What I think is very important, and I think that this is a really important point, is I believe in life, you've got to choose your vices. You've got to choose your poison. And I have very much done that. I have never touched Coke. I have never touched any of that stuff. I've never done pills. I don't drink very often. I really only drink when I go out to dinner, so I've done shrooms and stuff like that. And I want to do acid. I have no problem with that. But in terms of like the hardcore drugs that would send someone over the edge, I've never even been interested in them. I've been around Coke, so much Coke. My old roommate in college was a fucking Coke dealer. I was around Coke all the time. I never even wanted to be around people doing it. It always put me off. I was like, I don't want to. It just icks me out. I don't mind if other people do it, but what I'm saying is that I realized I registered in my mind early, like if this is what you're going to do, and you're going to impair yourself in some way to feel better or impair yourself to deal with things or whatever, make sure you just do that. And that's why I tell this story about, around the time I was turning 30, I was like, I think I was drinking too much for a little while. Like when I got really into bourbon and I started buying, people might remember, I had 30, 40, 50, 60 bottles of bourbon at one time in my apartment in San Francisco. And we were drinking every day. And at some point I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't. I occasionally have a bottle of bourbon in the house or whatever, but
you said you were 30 when you
around the time like when I was turning 30, and I was like, I don't think I would ever consider myself an alcoholic. What I would consider myself is someone who is on the road. Yeah. And so that was, like well on the way. Okay. And so that's when I realized that's kind of my ending note that I wanted to say is like, I'm not one of these guys. I love the memes when it's like, you're addicted to marijuana. And then it's the guy with like all of the words, like writing out a paragraph of why he's not addicted to marijuana. It's like, no, that's fine. You can call me addicted to marijuana. People are addicted to all sorts of different things. What's important is that I acknowledge that and try to really limit what I would consider my chemical intake to that. And if you can do that, I think you can even do that with alcohol. I just think it's too risky for me. Like I know my boundaries well enough to know I'm not a mean drunk at all. I'm actually a very happy and amiable drunk, but I just know it's bad for me. So like there was no social reason. I wasn't abusing anyone. I wasn't putting anyone off. It's just like, Colin, you're actually probably better when you're drunk. but you shouldn't always be drunk. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Is that I smoke a lot of weed. And
it sounds like you
I'm
smoke
not
more than me because I have it as a reward system. Like I do it like you did at IGN. Like when I come home from work after coming home from the Washington Post at 6-7 o'clock, I'll do it. And even on weekends, I don't do it until the evening time. I try to keep it into the evening time. So
yeah, I would if I had to go to work. So like I wouldn't be a degenerate and go like to work and be smoking weed and stuff.
I can't work. I can't go to work stoned because I've tried. And believe me, every single time I go to work stoned, I just laugh my ass off because I just think it's so funny that I'm stoned and like everybody is there
at the Washington Post.
At the Washington Post, yeah. To be clear, I've never actually been stoned at the Washington Post. I haven't done that, but I've been stoned at like my past newsrooms for sure.
Fair enough. Cog, I want to hear from you. I have no idea where you're at with this because you're a man who takes care of himself. You know,
yeah, exactly.
I
was a little worried about this topic because I was like, we can do weed or alcohol because I know everyone has a history with alcohol.
Alcohol is a whole other topic. I mean, we can do that another time.
Yeah, exactly. We can do that too.
This is a good one.
Yeah, so let's hear from you, Cog. I want to know more about your experience.
So for me, it's weird because like growing up in the South Bronx, hip hop era, I'm around it all the time, right? So it's like my friends. I had a bunch of live wire friends that I used to hang out with, and basically they were like, yo, come on, Cog, we gotta, you know what I'm saying? We gotta roll up. We got the chocolate. We got the Dutch. We got the, like, we got it for you. And I'm like, all right. And I'll try it. But I swear to God, it ain't do nothing for me. Like I wasn't where they was at. And I was mad I wasn't where they was at. I was just like, they look like they having the greatest time. And for me, I'm just like, okay. You know what I'm saying? So it ended up becoming a thing where it's like, all right, he ain't fun when he's on weed, but we like when he drink. We love when Cog drink. So that became my thing. And then I became like the mule. So literally they was like, yeah, nobody gonna think of Cog, yo, you mind if I put this here for a little bit? And I'm like, bro, come on, man. Like we game here, all right, but you know, this ain't the spot for this all the time, you know, kind of thing. And I would get my people out of spots. You know what I mean? So it'd be that kind of situation. I think what it was is that everybody moms knew my mom and I was the safe haven, right? So they're like, all these guys, they gaming there, you know, kind of thing. So that's why the mule thing worked for a little bit. It was effective, that kind of thing. But it's funny watching stuff now because like in the culture of it, like becoming legal and like, I just know so many of my people who just got locked up for the littlest things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's the littlest things, man. And
sucks.
It's just like, yeah, it sucks now because I'm like, think how many people got destroyed, you know, off of that. But
it's unfair, dude. I actually wanted to say that real quick, Cog, and to throw it back to you is I wrote that down because I wanted to say this is to instill, because it's the old heads podcast, although the youngest of us, me, is 38, but generally speaking, our audience is younger. It cannot be understated how different it is now, especially in New York and Massachusetts and places like that. And I know Gene can relate to it, but even Guam, Hawaii, and California had a much different culture. Like medical marijuana was legalized in California in 1996. When I was in college in Massachusetts in 2002, 2003, 2004, it was mandatory minimum sentences for any possession of marijuana. It was really dangerous to smoke weed.
Yes.
Like in some places in New York was the same way. And now you go to Massachusetts and you can just buy it. Now you go to New York and you just buy it. So it's important to your point, Cog, it's really important to underline that for people that are younger or don't realize it is totally different. It was weed was so expensive, $300 or $400 an ounce when I was in college because you had like, who the fuck was going to do it? Except for the people that were,
it was a risk. Yeah.
I could rat you out in 2 seconds and you'd be in prison.
2 seconds.
You know, and it was a huge trust circle. Like people wouldn't answer their phones and people had codes and all these different things. It was different. So I want to go back to, but I just wanted to throw that out there because I think that was a really important point you were kind of making there.
That was literally where I was going with that as far as my perspective, because it's like, it's surreal for me to walk the streets of New York or whatever. You see like the dispensary, like the open public promotion of it And I'm just like, yo, it was so low. It was like, yo, we meet at this spot. We, you know, like G was saying, the hot box, you get in the car. It was that kind of vibe. And it was, like you said, the trust system. You only talk to your people that you know got you. And anybody you brought new in this circle, people would look at, yo, who's your man? Like, who's that guy? You know, kind of thing.
And
so
usually you would break the ice by that person bringing weed or do like that kind. That's like usually how you would, you know, get yourself in, because you're just like, I'm down. So either I'm an informant, I guess, or I'm actually down to smoke. And that's, so it was a whole different protocol back then, you know?
Whole different era. But yeah, that's what it is. But I mean, for me, the last thing I wanted to say about it is that I do appreciate it because, again, you know, I came from an era of a lot of, basically people would come to my house. I'd be like, yo, you come to games, come out, chill, get away from the foolishness. And I knew a lot of people get in trouble a lot. Real live wire. But what I liked is when they were on weed, they were super chill. They were fun. They were hilarious. And I'm like, yo, I like that side of you. You need to stay on weed. Because I would tell them, I'm like, whatever you smoking, I'll stay on that. Keep that up. Because it really brought them down a notch. And to be honest, saved them from a lot of situations where they're like, yo, I'm about to go do something. I'm like, nah, chill. Wait, you know, you got the chocolate, you got the blunt. Get what you need. We chill. I drink with you. We bug out. And it would kind of diffuse situations. So people, for me, I felt it was very helpful for a lot of people, either with anxiety, anger issues, you know, and to be honest, violence, you know what I'm saying? So, to stop violence. So that's my experience with it.
Yeah, no one's ever done a mass shooting extremely stoned, because you would just realize, I just don't want to do this right now.
No, there's like, it's interesting, like, someone like Tucker Carlson would argue, I don't know, a lot of people don't like him, but I'm not endorsing this argument, but he would make the argument that like marijuana makes people compliant. And to me, I feel like marijuana is kind of a societal good. If you embrace it, you don't have to do it, to just calm down, you know, chill.
Yeah.
I really do think that it has that effect on people. That's why when you meet the occasional goofball that's like getting crazy on weed or whatever, I'm like, you're not even, it's like not even possible. Like, what are you doing? You're such a, it's crazy. I've smoked so much in my life. I know exactly what it does. And I think that can be good if it's harnessed. Again, if it's harnessed properly.
Absolutely.
But really interesting insight, Cog. Dave, what about you, my friend? I mean, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but not too much. And I know, did we ever smoke together? I don't think we ever have.
Yeah, just the one time. We had just recently remembered you and I smoked in Santa Monica together like a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
But that might have been
recently.
the only time. Plenty of drinking together and all of that, but that might have been the only time of smoking weed together.
Yeah, I'm just a social drinker like that. And yeah, because I actually, Santa Monica, I also smoked with Dad, which was fun. You know? I think people feel a little safer in California doing it because it's so accepted.
Yeah.
It's just the culture's a little different. I would just smoke weed walking down the street in California. It was no problem at all. I would walk to the beach in Santa Monica just smoking weed all day. And no one gave a fuck.
It smells like weed everywhere in DC too.
Oh, yeah.
That's interesting.
Ron DeSantis is on to something that it's not. Like he was saying something about how like he doesn't think it should be legal because it smells so bad. And I'm like, that's not a reason to keep something illegal. But yeah, it's like people need to be, I've been rude about it in the past. And I think people need to kind of contain it a little more in their own houses or in their own spaces.
Sure, I got Febreze, you know, just to make sure
it doesn't linger, which is so interesting. Like it just
doesn't linger.
It's not like tobacco, you know.
It's not like tobacco. It's not like cigarette smoke at all. Yeah.
No. Like you can walk into a space where I say that all the time. Is like I think you can. I smoke in my house. I think you can walk in here and not know if I go a day without smoking.
Personally, I love it. I love the smell of it.
Did you guys
hear? This is a very timely topic. I haven't heard it from the horse's mouth yet, but supposedly, everybody's favorite stoner, pop culture daddy, sometimes I guess still movie director Kevin Smith has quit smoking weed.
Oh, interesting.
Now, everybody's posting their little 2-minute YouTube video about it, but I haven't heard it from him yet. So I don't know why this is going around, but you know, he's the one you almost think of. He's like the modern day Cheech and Chong. You know, we all think of Kevin Smith. So
he was a great inspiration to me. Yeah, he is.
Oh, that's
yeah. I have him myself. Sometimes we FaceTime.
That's
awesome. Gene, do you know, like, did you ever hear the story about how we did a kind of funny podcast with him in 2014 and we did it at his house?
No.
And like
awesome.
it was so weird. Like he invited us to his house and we just did a podcast there, and I never saw him or heard from him ever again after that.
That was it, right?
He was just really friendly to us, and I always appreciated that.
Friendly. He's a super chill guy.
And that was important because like he was an important as a young stoner.
Yes.
And even before that, Kevin Smith was like it was really, and Jay and Silent Bob were iconic. Anyway, Dig, you go on. I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? As an antithesis, a little more taking a page out of Cog's book, I can actually count the times on two hands that I've smoked weed. But I have to say this, like I was thinking about it prior to the show. I've always been much more attracted to the idea of actually smoking weed regularly rather than ever actually doing it for whatever reason. In other words, I could really see it working for me on a regular basis still to this day. It's just something I never really picked up for no obvious reason, especially because it was always in my orbit, like between skateboarding, and I knew all types with skating. I knew straight edge guys too, but there was obviously a lot of people in skateboarding, art school, right? The whole video game thing. And, dating back all the way to, high school on Long Island too, just the whole stoner thing. And of course, hip hop. Like Cog talked about, like growing up with hip hop and rap culture, dating all the way back to like the mid to late 80s, like that was always something that was around and something that I never turned my nose up against. I never like got into it. But I have to say, like, let me explain. So if you know my personality, right, I'm pretty neurotic, a little bit anxious, tend to worry, maybe even a little bit of a hypochondriac, but there's a part of me, there's like a dark side of me, maybe you would say, that is really attracted to the power of like a harder drug, particularly acid, particularly mushrooms. I'm fascinated with the idea of like, there's this thing that could give you access to parts of your brain or parts of your intelligence or psyche, whatever, that you can't otherwise tap into. Also, that could kind of elevate your creativity and make you see and experience things that otherwise you couldn't. There's something really tempting about that for me, but I know I can't really go there because I'm just too much of, it doesn't really click with my personality, although I'm fascinated with it. So doing something a lot safer that I feel kind of confident in with weed would be fascinating to me. I think about it a lot. Like if Helene was like, you know what, we should start smoking on the weekends over, I'd be all in. Like get the kids taken care of Friday night, Saturday night, kind of make it a ritual, smoke a little joint or whatever. I could definitely see getting into that. It's kind of amazing that I haven't actually gone there. And the other thing is, I think back to even being a kid, just pop culture, just kind of like the image of the prototypical lovable stoner in fiction, right? In film and TV, like Spicoli, Shaggy,
Dave Chappelle too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the dude, Jay and Silent Bob. We already talked about Snoop Dogg and Dre.
The dude, the Big Lebowski. Yeah, that's right.
There's something about like that whole thing that Colin was saying, like something that inspires just chilling, relaxation, taking the edge off, mellowing out. There's something really kind of cool about that. And it is kind of also like an extra sort of feather in its cap for me that it's so much safer now. Cause I do remember going to college in the 90s and not only in New York and Philly, but I was regularly in Boston and I was regularly in Pittsburgh. We went down to Atlanta pretty frequently because we had friends all over that were going to school all over the country. So it was dangerous, not just having it on your person, but going to buy it, obviously smoking. Like you could, not only because of the police at that time, but just because of the whole system, like the whole infrastructure, guys carrying guns. Like it was a lot. The environment was a lot different 20 years ago. So that's a whole nother thing now that I could actually get it legally, not have to worry about the heat, the fuzz.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, dude, you got medical marijuana up the wazoo in Pennsylvania. You're all
it's changed a lot since I first got to Philadelphia in the mid 90s. It's like a whole different thing. So it is interesting. And the other thing that I was laughing about is Colin and I had very 70s hippie parents. So I remember my mom and dad, they had on my dad's dresser, he had this like hand carved wooden box. And I don't remember ever snooping or going through it or whatever, but I remember seeing it up there. But what I do remember is the little package of rolling papers. I would later, when I got a little older, I realized, okay, those are rolling papers. Mm-hmm. So I know my mom and dad were smoking in the 70s and 80s. I'm not sure how regularly. And I don't remember the smell. That's another thing. I love the smell. Even as someone who doesn't really smoke, the smell, I walk down the street, like if we go to Philly with the kids and went down on South Street or something and I smell it, I'm like, just naturally like that smell.
That's the way I feel about pipe tobacco. I feel that way.
I
about
like
pipe
it
tobacco.
too. Yeah,
it smells so good.
Cigar doesn't bother me either for some reason. Like the secondhand smoke. I don't know. Maybe that was my vice though. That was my one vice, was actually smoking ciggies, which I was a late
cigarettes
adapter. Like maybe it was like I was 22 and I smoked up to like 2 packs a day for the better part of a decade.
Me too.
Before I finally stopped. So you know what I mean, Gene? So like part of the smoking thing also appeals to me. It's something I always enjoyed.
Smoking feels powerful, man. You're breathing fucking smoke out of your mouth. How do you call it, the dragon? You know,
it's like embracing the dragon. Yeah, dude. Yeah. I like looking at it that way. It's true. It's like something. But yeah, I always like the pop culture resonance and all that kind of stuff.
Cancer like me.
Wait, so let me stop here real quick, Dave. So. That's interesting. So, Gene, you smoked cigarettes, and
I smoked cigarettes since I was like 15.
Yeah, and when did you stop?
Okay,
I stopped 5 years ago.
5 years ago. Okay, cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You went a little deeper than me. All right.
Isn't it strange? Let me ask you this, Dave, and throwing it back to you. Isn't it strange? And because I assume Cog didn't smoke cigarettes, right? You never smoked.
I hated y'all. I hated y'all. Because I was the club kid, and think about this for the old heads. That's when cigarettes was cool in the club, in the bar.
Right.
So I'd come into it, and it used to bust me when I would go out nice, because all my clothes would come back smelling like that. And my mom was like, where you was at? And I'm like, damn it. Because that's when it was illegal to do it in the bars and the clubs in New York back in the day. But continue. This is funny.
No, you're totally right. That's a good point, too. Like, we used to joke around about how our dad would make us go into what we would call the smoking chamber in diners on Long Island. When we would smoke, because it was like the separate smoking section. But Dig, it's funny because you smoke cigarettes too, and I remember that. I must say, I don't know why, but I have never wanted to smoke cigarettes. I've smoked them once in a while. I'll bum one if I'm like really drunk or something. And I went through probably a 6 month or 1 year phase of occasionally smoking cloves when I was in college. But that was a whole different thing, and they were gross.
Cloves, Jarms or whatever.
Jajarm, right? A Jajarm original or whatever they're called. And so. But for some reason, even though I have a clear oral fixation with smoking, and I don't mean that in some sexual way. Obviously I have that. But for some reason, I don't. I love cigars and stuff like that, or a hookah, but I don't feel the need to really do any of that stuff. And I've never been interested in smoking cigarettes, and I feel kind of blessed because it feels like a bullet dodged. It doesn't quite register why that never was an interest to me. What was it about it that you liked about it?
I think I started in art school / working like my first retail jobs on the side. You know, those little jobs putting myself through school, whether I was working at Urban Outfitters or bussing in a restaurant or managing a skate shop, like having those menial jobs. I think it really was that sort of time to exhale / take a 15-minute break and just build in some sort of ritual where you're just getting away from work. It becomes a thing where you just go and bullshit outside with the other people that smoke. Have a sticky, yeah, right. Like that whole thing of like those built-in little moments to look forward to. But I have to say, like, even though I smoked, and I smoked a lot through certain periods, especially being younger as a student, like a lot of times I'd come away feeling really shitty from smoking, and I would get like, I think a lot of times I got hungover at night drinking at bars and clubs was from chain smoking. It wasn't even from the alcohol. I would just dehydrate myself by literally lighting my cigarette with my prior cigarette, like, and doing that the whole night. You know, when you're having beers and you're having whiskey and all that kind of stuff too. But I think that's the interesting thing about weed. At least there's some sort of positive effect. It chills you out. I knew one guy in particular, this guy Mike I went to school with. He was a really talented dude. He had really traditional drafting skills. Like, he was a talented artist. He was a gifted artist, but he was also super creative. But he swore that he couldn't like do the level of work that he wanted to unless he was stoned. And I knew other people that were complete, like, you know, Jeff Bridges, Big Lebowski, like, you know, sat around, did the bare minimum to survive in their bathrobe and really didn't do anything and just weren't successful. And that's another interesting thing about weed. Like, I knew all types, you know, the productive, the successful, the slackers. Like, that was the interesting thing about weed. But I always admired it because at least you got that effect. With cigarettes, you're essentially just giving yourself lung cancer. You know what I mean? There's really no benefit except for it looks cool and you kind of feel cool. And it's that little time to decompress, on your smoke break or whatever. But yeah, I still think like, I think it would be fun. I love what you guys are saying too about giving yourself that little payoff, giving yourself that one thing to look forward to or that reward. Because I used to do that with food and I made myself sick. I mean, I was, you wouldn't know this now, but 15 years ago, I weighed almost 200 pounds, because I would come home from my commute. I was commuting from Philly to New York. I was exhausted. So it was like a 6-hour commute every day. And that would be the thing. Like I would come home and just scarf fast food or Chinese or pizza, all the foods I still love, but in no moderation. So it seemed like I'd be much better off actually if I was doing that with weed the whole time.
Yeah, it's interesting how destructive smoking cigarettes is, like manifestly. I've always been more interested. There are landmark marijuana studies. There was one in 2004 in UCLA that UCLA did and a few others, but and I'm afraid to say this. I don't know where the science really sits with this per se, but wouldn't we have had an epidemic of baby boomers, let's say, dying of emphysema, lung cancer, and all these things if marijuana was bad for you, in some physical way?
Yeah.
Now, I'm probably going to have both lung cancer and emphysema now because I said that, but hopefully we'll be able to screen it out in one of these early screenings and I'll get it taken care of before it gets any worse.
Look,
but
I actually asked my doctor. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, please.
Oh, yeah. I actually asked my doctor, like, is it like I already have colon cancer? Like, is it cool? Like, would me smoking weed make it worse? And he was like, no, it wouldn't do anything.
There you go.
He was like, you should smoke weed. I prefer edibles. Like, he would try to get me on edibles, but it's like smoking is fine. There's like no real hard truth as to like whether it causes lung cancer.
Okay.
Yeah, and I feel like we would know that by now. Just like we knew about cigarettes. Like one of the sinister kind of things about Nazi Germany. I mean, it wasn't sinister. Like one of the weird, I guess, notes of history of Nazi Germany was like they were the first country that really emphasized not smoking. And like Hitler was like totally against it and thought it was horrible and all of this. I think because they saw the results and in the post-war period, I think people started finally having the wherewithal and the ability to do real studies. And it's kind of like Nazi rocket science. It's like, yeah, we'll just take that. And we'll just pretend that was ours the entire time. I also wanted to say before we exit out that I just wanted to, I guess underline, not say, but underline the idea of just all things in moderation.
Absolutely.
I'm not proud of the amount that I smoke. I don't want to come off that way. I will say that it has benefited me a great deal in terms of, I have very bad anxiety, really, really bad anxiety. And I'm clinically depressed. I mean, I am. So it's just been in that way. It's just been very helpful and useful to me. And I'm thankful Virginia has medical marijuana. And actually, marijuana is totally legal in Virginia. But when Glenn Youngkin became governor and the Republicans took over, they never made a mechanism to sell it legally. So there's no way to buy it here. But you can. There's only 5 dispensaries in all of Virginia, and they're all medical dispensaries. But they deliver right to my house. And I'm really appreciative of the substance from that perspective. Because when I talk about getting stoned, yeah, it's nice and it's good. And I don't mind that. But it's getting me to a place where I can also deal with my life. And I think I said this on a previous show, I'm trying to unwind myself from my pharmaceuticals a little bit. And at the behest of my psychiatrist, actually. And I'm trying to get myself a little bit off smoking a little bit less weed too, and trying to get a little more normalcy. And I understand that these are things that stop me from dealing with things. But what I worry about, and I think a lot of people worry about, is like, can I function dealing with things? And and this is kind of the thing I was saying about Currency earlier and other notable stoners like the actors and all the different musicians, is like, if you can harness it, you become very productive and successful. And it's hard to tell yourself that it's ruining your life when it's not. And that's, I think, a really important component of it too, is like, why do you smoke, Colin? Well, it helps me feel good. Can't you quit? And it's like, well, what in my life would be different other than me feeling worse?
Sure.
Yes.
I pay my bills. I have a really successful company. I take care of my people. I have good relationships with my families and friends. all these different things. So I think if you can keep those things in line, that's why I was saying, if you have the power to do that with alcohol, more power to you, I guess. I just don't think a lot of people do, or a lot of people think they do, you know?
I did not. I was an alcoholic for sure. Fun fact, I've been arrested twice for drunk driving. So
really? Jesus Christ, you really are like an Anthony Bourdain type figure.
Yeah, I don't have my driver's license anymore. It got revoked. You know, it's like it's just gone. You know,
I don't drive by choice, but you don't drive because you're forced to. So that's so interesting.
Because the government says I can't. So.
Yeah, that's so interesting, Gene. I didn't know that about you.
Happens to a lot of people. Happens to a lot of people.
It's real.
Yeah. After my second arrest, I was like, you know what? Maybe I could slow down on the drinking. So I've been sober for 5 years. So cigarettes and alcohol, I quit both at the same time.
Good for you.
That's great. Wow, that's tough. Awesome. Because I'm always fascinated when I watch like Intervention or something on A&E, and they go and they get to 90-day treatments or whatever, but a lot of them smoke cigarettes to get through it. And I'm always like, that's so interesting. Why is this better?
Yeah,
I guess because you're not abusive to other people. I think that's the fundamental component of it, is like not so much your own health, but like the way you treat others.
And it's just socially acceptable. It's nicotine. It's one of the most dangerous chemicals, right? You always hear that old adage, like if you take an eyedropper of nicotine and put it on your tongue, you'll die, like that whole thing. Like it is interesting what's socially acceptable. It's probably more damaging for your body, but you know, we're still holdover from like the glamorous Hollywood images of smoking on screen, you know, and it is cool. I mean, pop in Mad Men. That's not old Hollywood. That's not that old, you know.
Yeah, I started smoking because I wanted to be cool. Like people stopped bullying me because I started smoking cigarettes, and also like all my favorite artists, Bob Dylan, Kurt Cobain, and wearing a Nirvana shirt today. You know, they all smoke cigarettes. You know, yeah, I still dream about cigarettes every day. You know, I'm pretty convinced that once I hit 65, I'm just going to start smoking again because I'm 25 years from now, I'm still going to want to smoke cigarettes. That's how
I miss it. I miss it a lot.
Yeah,
sometimes. I mean, you could conceivably see a future in the not too distant future where there would be no downside to smoking, because you would probably be able to be cured or whatever you had, right? I mean, presumably.
Oh, that's interesting.
You can imagine a situation like that. Isn't there what would it be? Oh, you know what? It's Battlestar Galactica, where the doctor on the ship chain smokes.
Right.
And it indicates that there's like no real worry about that or whatever. You know,
Joe Biden, please do something about this. Please, Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, we need you.
He's right there, dude. Just go knock on his door. What is it? A few blocks away? Come on. You go get him.
All right. Cog, I want to hear from you next. I'm interested about this topic because I don't know, you were vague with it. I don't know exactly which direction this is going to go, and I'm excited to hear.
Yeah. I want to hear this too.
Middlemen. I'm purposely vague with it. Two aspects to look at it. One, the reason why I brought it up is that from a personal relationship standpoint, I always find myself in this position. Where, you know, Cog like everybody. Cog is cool. We about to peace, chill. And I'll have friends who really don't rock with each other, but I am the common denominator, right? And I find myself, and I even find this with family, where it's just like, they'll talk to me about the other person. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, look, I get it. This person may be hard to deal with, but like, you should be able to pick up that phone or just man to man, woman to woman, and just hash this out. Because for me, as I've gotten older, I've just sat because I'm like, I always tell this is one of my like go-to moves. I'll say like, God forbid something happened to me. You two would never talk to each other. You know what I'm saying? Like if I passed away, that I'd be rolling around in my grave. Like, I can't believe there's just no community. I am literally the only thread to keep you two in division. I just went through this recently. I just thought about it more and more as I reflected with my life. And I'm just like, I've been that guy all the time. You know what I mean? And part of me is honored, right? Part of me is flattered because it's like, yo, we love you, Cog. Like, boom, you know, I'm willing to at least talk to you about it. And I've solved a lot of situations. So that was the first part, you know, if you guys have been in that. And then the second part was obviously like business, right? Where it's just like, you know, the middleman or the intermediary? Like, how do you deal with that person? You know what I'm saying? When you're on one of the other sides and you got to go through someone who, you know, it might be a situation that you're not really too comfortable with, but you have to go through that intermediary. So wherever you guys want to open it up, take. Actually, I want to start with Dagan on this first. I want to start with Dagan because I'm curious, Dagan, like, how do you, I feel maybe you might be in that situation sometimes, but I'm curious.
Definitely. I love this topic, man. This is a great one. This is one of those ones I got jealous of. I was like, oh shit, why isn't that on my list? Why did I think of that? Why didn't I think of that moment? Yeah, you know what it is, Cog? It's everything you just said. It's being the diplomatic one, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I can be very diplomatic. I can be diplomatic to the point of almost sort of handicapping myself, of like getting in between of like, I don't know how I feel, you know, that type of thing. And I think also with me, there's also a desire for diplomacy, maybe even more so than my personality would sometimes allow myself. So in other words, sometimes I have a temper, right? Sometimes I feel like I have a grudge, whatever. But I think the Dagan that I like the most, the Dagan that I enjoy being or embodying, is the diplomatic one. And a lot of times I am sort of caught, like whether it's friends or family, or it could even be Helene's family and stuff like that. I feel like I'm in that position of diplomacy where sort of, trying to extend that olive branch, whatever it is, right? That type of thing. And you know what this also reminded me of? Have you guys, could speak to certainly when I was younger, but maybe even it's still the case. You have a group of friends, a good group of friends, right? Maybe it's a lot of people. Maybe it's only 3 or 4 people, right? And there's that one person that one-on-one, it's awkward if it's just you and that one other person without the connective tissue of those other friends in the group. Like you feel comfortable with everybody else one-on-one, but there's that one person you feel like you need the whole group in order to, you know what I mean? And that's what makes me feel like, are those people the middlemen, or am I the middleman in that situation? Because maybe they don't feel that same level of discomfort one-on-one where I have that awkward sort of notion of like, oh, it just doesn't feel right, you know, if it's just being the dynamic of that one-on-one. So it definitely reminded me of that. I could think of a lot of cases where I get frustrated with this because I feel like I'm not a stubborn person. That's one thing I will say about myself. Really, in all ways, I don't feel a stubbornness. I'm open to laugh at myself. I'm open to suggestions. I can admit when I'm wrong. You know, I also think that kind of comes with the territory of somebody who I think is probably of middling intelligence compared to my orbit, right? My friends, my family, like I'm probably in the middle somewhere intelligence wise. So one thing I am good at is being diplomatic and not being stubborn and just being open to ideas and how can we think of a way through this, right? Maybe a little problem solving. But I do find myself getting frustrated if there's bad blood, right? If 2 people are sparring, maybe it's, you know, my wife and one of her sisters, or, you know, 2 old friends that just aren't getting along, or they had a falling out. Maybe it was even over a social media thing, which becomes more and more prevalent, I think. Or it could be just, you know, 2 people in my family that are just like not getting along, or they have a lot of shit to say. There's just something is unsettled between them. And I feel like if I could kind of come and try to reconnect you guys or kind of settle your differences, whatever, why can't you bring some of that energy on both of your sides too? Almost like they're relying on the people in the middle to, you know, broker some sort of truce, right? And that I find myself getting really frustrated about that, because it feels like if you're, you know, there's probably a good chance these 2 people are smarter than me, if not of equal intelligence. Why do I know enough to say, you know, not only be an adult and have some level of maturity, but also, you know, why can't you kind of bring the energy of wanting to make peace? And I feel like I find myself in that situation, and it's not on purpose. So just being introspective and thinking back to different things and different instances, and there's a lot of them, right? I can't even count them on toes and fingers. It's like, yeah, I guess that's just kind of my function. That's just my go-to. And I think that's kind of about, you know, just kind of embracing your personality and being stuck in the middle, and maybe even in a good way, because sometimes it does work out. Sometimes you're able to bring those two people together. They could settle their differences. They can make peace. They could squash the beef and, move on and stuff like that. I even found myself doing that with strangers, like, in other words, like if we grew up skating and there was a group of kids from another town that were just, I don't know, they didn't like somebody in my squad or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I barely knew them. We could roll up to the same skate spot or the same skate park, and I could take my friend and the person I barely knew and just kind of, just put everything out on the pavement and be like, let's just take care of this right now type of thing. Not in a, hopefully not in a physically violent way, but let's just squash this beef while everybody's present type of thing. Here. Yeah. So, it's funny because when I first started writing for this, I was thinking middle managers. And then I was like, oh, no. This is middlemen. And then I came to myself. And then also the other thing is like, where did I get that from though? Like, who in my life did I inherit that from? And I think it's my grandparents, my maternal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know.
I no think fucking that's idea. What it was. Just very diplomatic people. Not that they weren't human in the fact that they could, I would hear them say, this and that about a neighbor or something like that, somebody who wasn't in earshot. But for the most part, just somebody who brought both of them, my grandma and grandpa, who were married for over 50 years. They were both very diplomatic people, and they always brought that energy of, wanting to get along with everybody, not in a placating way, but in a genuine way of like, just wanting to get along with neighbors, wanting everybody in the family to get along, and kind of having a zero tolerance policy for people fighting at the dinner table. So that's my kind of best guesses where that kind of how I absorb that, or who I absorb that from.
Yeah, that makes sense because I don't see it. I don't see it otherwise. In our very matriarchal family, I do think it's interesting though, because I do get that from you, Dig. You've always been very diplomatic, and I always actually thought, I didn't know. I guess I never used that word in regards to you. I always just thought you were really kind. Like, you're just a nice person.
I appreciate
that. Now I think I'm a kind and nice person too, but I also don't think I suffer like any foolishness at all. I will shut it off in 2 seconds. And I've said that before. That was like the best compliment I ever got in my professional career at IGN was when the managing editor told me, you really don't suffer any fools. And I was like, that's right. And he meant it as an insult, I think. Like, that wasn't necessarily a comment. I'm like, no, you're absolutely right. Like, I don't. I'll be nice to you, please, thank you, all the nice cordial things. As long as you keep it on the up and up with me, I will always treat you like that. But the second you go off, the beaten path, and that's a problem for me, or it comes into confrontation with something that I want or need or someone I love, that's a big problem. So you are diplomatic, but I always just thought that was born out of like an overwhelming sense of kindness that I think I'm a kind person, but I don't have that overwhelming sense of kindness. If you annoy me or set me off in some way, I'm not a yeller and a screamer at all. I'm more of like a snide comment kind of person.
See, I admire that though, Kyle. And I think a lot of people like me, and I don't want to speak for Cog, but maybe like Cog, I admire something that maybe I put on the back burner. And what I would say in somebody who doesn't suffer fools, that's honesty.
Yes.
And sometimes I think I'm not honest. And, that comes with kind of bad feelings for me because it feels like you're not being authentic. But sometimes that kindness or the diplomacy takes precedent just because you're hypersensitive about how the other person feels. Right. But that could come at the, at the cost of honesty. And that's where you gotta kind of balance the scales.
Well, I've seen you. I mean, I won't talk about specifics, but I've seen you mistreated by other people in person and not do anything about it.
Right.
And I do something about it. And say something or do something about it, which is just our nature. So I appreciate that about you. But Gene, I want to hear from you. What comes to mind when we talk about middlemen here?
This is a great topic because I initially I also thought it was about middle management, and now once Cog broke it down, I was like, oh, I totally get this, and I totally empathize with this because as a traditional journalist, I am trained to see all sides, right? So that's that's just, and so much. The part of the reason why I became a journalist is because it did help formulate my personality. I used to be the kind of person who would never just talk to people, and then once I became a journalist and I was forced to have to interview people, I got used to talking to people, and now it's very, very comfortable for me. But also, part of that training was embedding this idea that I need to hear from all perspectives and not really take a side on things, right? And when I hear about middlemen, and I feel like the experience I remember the most recently is with you, Colin, when I came on the show and everyone hated me for doing it, and I was like, but like it's not. Well, you're my friend, and I feel like Colin's cool too, and I empathize with you, Cog, too, because like you're. I don't know how many times I've had a birthday party where my friends would tell me, I'm not going to your birthday party if he's going to be there. He did.
You just can't do that to people.
No, it's terrible.
Like they would say that. So like if I invited Colin to my birthday party, like all of games journalism would never show up. Period. It doesn't matter what I mean to them or anything. They just would be like, Colin's there. I'm not fucking showing up. That's it. So like if it felt very familiar to me to hear people say, you're cool, Gene. I respect you. You heard that all the time. Like when that happened, right? It was like, Gene, I really respect your work, but like you're really out of line with this. And it's like if you really respect my opinion, then maybe you might kind of see my point on this.
Exactly.
And so yeah, I don't know. It's funny to hear you say, Colin, that you don't suffer fools, because that is actually the conclusion I came to New Yorkers, because I'd never been to New York before I moved to the East Coast in 2015. So my impression was always, New Yorkers are really rough around the edges. They're rude or whatever like that. And then I actually went to New York, and I actually started to interact with random New Yorkers, not even just like people I knew there, but just like random people on the street. And I was like, these people are very kind and nice. They just don't suffer fools. Like that is exactly the phrase I thought. I was like, these people just do not suffer foolishness. If you're lollygagging on the street or whatever that you don't know where you're going, then yeah, people will yell at you. Just don't be foolish about it. But yeah, I mean that's where I come from exactly. Like it's just like I've always been kind of like the person who got along with everybody, and it doesn't matter like what your background was. And this is part of this is because I grew up around the area, and we all grew up around the area where there was serendipity in meeting people. Now everything is run by algorithms. When you want to have a roommate in your dorm, you can find apps to find people that have your exact interests.
That's so interesting.
I
was just told who I was rooming with, and then given a phone number, and you had to call them.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you didn't have to call them, but you should.
Yeah. Kids don't have to do that now, because now I'm like, oh, I want somebody who's more liberal or who blah 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 blah. My roommate in college was homophobic, Christian, thought dinosaurs didn't exist, and God placed the bones there to test us and everything like that. So it was a classic conservative, like ultra conservative.
Ken Ham, yeah, Ken Ham style,
and I still got along with him, like I was able to kind of change his views on gay folks. That was great. That was a total win for me. He still thinks the dinosaurs aren't real, and it's like, okay, well, I'll take what I can get. But it's like that's how I was trained. I was raised by just being thrown into situations with different people that are completely different from my own background. And what am I supposed to do? Antagonize them? We sleep in the same goddamn room. So what am I supposed to do? I have to try to understand him, and he has to try to understand me. So it's very exhausting to be that person. Even at work, where like people would fight, I would still try to be the mediator, and I would like pull people aside when I see someone's upset. I'm like, you know what? Don't take whatever he said personally. He's just like that. He's just like that. Like he didn't really mean anything personally to you. That's just how his personality is, and he just comes off that way. So just calm down. And I'll tell the other person, it's like, you know what, like that person is real sensitive, blah, blah, blah. So it's really exhausting, really, for me to be the middleman, to be the middleman. So yeah, I totally see that. Like, I wish it was a value that I could I wish it was something that I could value in myself. But it is so tiring, like it was so tiring to hear all the stuff about Colin, and it's like I just don't want to deal with this.
And the last one, to interject what you just said, the thing sometimes that's frustrating as the middleman is that you could have two people that I'm like, if they gave each other a legit chance, they would realize how much in common they actually have.
Exactly.
And there's so many things that actually are cool that they will respect. But for whatever reason, there's some specific barrier or wall that two are not willing to compromise, whether it be ego or whatever. And I just find it interesting. I was just like, wow, you know what I'm saying? Because like I could see these two could actually be good friends. And there are some success stories where people I was able to kind of resolve something and then they're actually cool. And that's like super dope, you know, to see. But I don't go in expecting that kind of thing. But I just wanted to, you had me thinking, Gene, about something you said.
Yeah, even we were about to sort before Colin, but Noam Bloom, he's someone that I used to tweet antagonistically with, and then eventually we kind of saw eye to eye on certain things, and we're like, you know what, maybe it's not so deep. It doesn't have to be that, and we can just
Twitter's ruined everyone. Ruins everyone.
Twitter just in general is just awful. So.
Well, many people. That's why I don't even bother anymore. Removing that which I had a workout, but removing this need to commentate. Once you get over it, it takes a little while, but once you get over it, you think back and you're like, why did I even do it? Yeah, exactly, Cog. I mean,
because you're smart. That's the thing, Kyle. I think that's why I don't have that tendency. I think that's why I'm sort of empathetic towards really smarter people. And I'm not trying to blow your head up too much.
No, tell me more.
But I think the really intelligent people, I'm sure this goes for Cog and Gene too. It's like, I think it's hard to resist, getting into that exchange because you really feel emphatically like you have something to say. This is what I wanted to ask you guys, though, because this is what this conjures for me. And you guys could tell me if you have a similar frustration. I think, again, this is kind of invoking Dark Dagan a little bit, but I do think there's just people that exist. Like, I know, like, my personality is I'm genuinely uneasy when things are unpleasant. So if there's a wall between people or some sort of bad blood or some sort of disagreement that's keeping them either apart or from associating with each other, fully, if there's some sort of barrier of ice between, like, even between others, even if they're not necessarily close to me, but they're kind of relatively near my orbit, I get very uneasy with that. And it makes me realize, like, I like things when they're on an even keel. I like people to be happy. Life is hard enough. We have enough challenges. Let's kind of squash the beef and just have a good time type of thing. I do genuinely think there's people in my life that I'm thinking of right now that I love that just must like the boat to be rocked. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's just like they can't bring an energy of healing. You know what I mean? Even if like they couldn't bring, and I think that's up to, if there's a disagreement of some sort between two people, you have to bring a 50-50 thing and kind of meet in the middle, compromise and all of that, right? But they just don't have that. They don't have the ability to do that. But sometimes I think they just don't want to. Do you guys ever feel that frustration or have people like that in your life? Where
yes,
they,
of course.
They just must not want to fix it.
Of course. Because I'm a really solutions-oriented person. I really am. But I must also admit that, and I think it's obvious, is that, well, it might not be obvious if you have seen me on social media in the past or whatever, where I'd really go at some people that I felt like defamed me or went at me first or whatever, is that I really actually don't like confrontation. And I would argue that the specifications of my life and my company and all these things are not exactly the way I want them, because I am afraid of confrontation. I don't like confrontation. Part of balancing life is like the tension that will be created by shaking the boat in any way. So like, if you shake the boat or make an alteration or do something like that, you have to calculate for it. And this is what I was thinking of the entire time of you guys, especially right when you were talking, Cog, in the beginning. People putting you in a position is so, like, where is your self-awareness? Dude, there are people at the Washington Post that I think are cartoon characters, right? There are people in Cog's orbit that I know he's friends with.
I think that too.
Yeah. There are people that are in Cog's orbit that I don't like at all, I would never identify those people. I would never say how I feel. It's irrelevant. Why would I ever put them in that position? Why would I ever, and why would I hold it against them that they like someone I don't like?
There you go.
That's so strange,
bro. That's tribalism.
There's like, listen, I cut a lot of people out of my life and was cut out of a lot of people's lives after what happened in 2017. And I also I have a memory of an elephant. I know exactly what everyone said, who said what. I remember. And what I do is I just live really well. And that's my best revenge. I don't need to stunt on anyone. And I certainly don't need to go to Cog and be like, hey, by the way, X, Y, and Z, fuck them. Or go to Gene and be like, what's up with this person at the Washington Post, and put them in this weird position where we're triangulating that it has nothing to do with anything. So I think a lot of that comes around from like general humanity and self-awareness that you're not the main character. Not everything has to work around you. Your interaction with person X has nothing to do with person Y, and you really shouldn't. It's not like someone's a murderer or they fucking raped someone or something. That's different. But what I'm saying is if you just don't like someone over a disagreement or a political thing or whatever, you can't put people that you care about in positions where they have to. It's just, that's why I always tell people, and I've said it to everyone in this company, it's like, you don't have to say anything about me. You don't have to defend me at all. I don't care. Right? Like, it's totally fine. And I try to ask as little about from people as possible, try to rock the boat as little as possible, just for that, I guess, that conciliatory situation. And I also try to, I wrote this down because I wanted to make sure to bring it up. It just came to mind for me is there are a few people in our neighborhood that just let their dogs poop in the common areas. Right. And I've said this before, and I bought custom poops, like pick up your poop signs and everything like that. That was me putting my shoulder into it and not creating any middleman. It's like, I'm going to take care of this myself. I'm not going to the HOA. I know the neighbors, but I'm not going to confront them anyway. I'm just going to have this kind of not confrontational, passive aggressive sort of thing, a signal that your behavior is wrong, that doesn't put anyone out, doesn't identify you by name, doesn't put an arrow next to you, and just tries to be as peaceful as possible. And Dig, you're totally right that there's people in our family that don't seem to care about that at all. Not that they're indecent or wrong. It's just that I'm not too much of a shit talker. I'm really not. Because I don't like the idea. I always imagine, I think about it all the time. Like, what do people say about me when I'm not around? I try not to put that energy out in the world. You can't always be consistent about it. But when I say I don't like someone, I just say it. I'll say it on the microphone and then everyone can know it. And it's no one's burden.
You're right. Yeah. It's a catharsis too, right?
Right. Exactly. So I just think I will say that I've most people don't put me in a position like that, and I try to be as conciliatory and peaceful as possible in all things. There are very few things that I would really shake things up about or go like. I don't even know the last time that I made like a scene about anything, really. To be honest with you, I don't, like with family or friends or like really had some sort of blowout with someone or whatever. I don't really know. And have I been walked on and have I been abused and taken advantage of sometimes? Yes. But I think generally on balance, it's worth keeping the peace. And so, yeah, that's kind of what came to mind for me. Cause we all dwell in these circles that they're not concentric. Like it's like a Venn diagram. So you either deal with that or you don't. And and not dealing with it is basically just removing yourself from the board entirely. I just choose to believe that people are complex enough to have relationships with different people for different reasons. There are people I like that I know a lot of people have big problems with in out there, I don't care. It's like that's my decision, my friendships, my relationships. And if you're in my life, then you have to understand that it has no bearing on you.
Exactly. It's that respect level of say, you know what, even though I don't rock with this person that you're with, I got respect for you. And that has nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? And be able to make that separation. Whereas like what Gene was talking about, which is like, yo, if you cool with that person, we're not cool. Like, whoa, like why is my friendship on trial now because of this relationship? How does it affect me and your interaction?
It does not affect us at all. It's like very strange.
It's very gang tribal behavior. And I'm like, bro, that makes no sense to me. So basically, I would tell people that if you would have forced me, this is the thing that I think Colin is similar is that if you're going to force me in that situation, you're not going to like the answer.
Yeah,
because I am not going to stop associating with someone just because you don't like them. You have to be able to separate that and respect me as a person. So it's funny how when people try to play those games, you know what I'm saying? I just think it's interesting to me that people kind of operate like that.
Yeah, I do too. It's duplicitous in some way.
Yes.
I don't, and actually it says a lot about them and the way they feel about you that you're manipulated or, it can be manipulated like that.
Yes.
Because I would go with you too and say there are very few people in this world, Dagan being one of them probably, where it's like if someone earnestly that I really like was in the most inner sanctum of family, right? And we're like, well, you really cannot relate to this person anymore. You cannot talk to this person anymore. Maybe. right? Like that would be, but you would have to really, I'd have to really capitulate at that point. No friend or casual acquaintance or fan or whoever, listener or anyone is ever going to bend me in that regard. So like when they come after me about my friendships with like people like Dave Rubin and others, I'm like, I don't care.
Right.
Because here's the thing. There's the difference between me and you. I know them. You don't.
That's the thing.
You know?
It's so nuanced. It's so nuanced and, forming sides against and asking somebody to join your side. These are things that start on the playground. And then we're in second grade, and with some people, it just doesn't end.
Some people never grow up. Some people just never grow up.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
As old as we are, I think we know a lot of older people. I think we know a lot of people in our lives that they just never grew up. That's it.
Yeah, I think you're right. For sure.
Cog, are you satisfied? Do you want to pull in any other things?
Fantastic.
All right, awesome. Yeah. That was great. All right, I'm gonna go pee real quick. Does anyone else need to use the bathroom? Because otherwise, you could just keep going without me, and we can just keep this all in. I don't know. Everyone good?
No,
all right,
good.
you guys. We'll just keep this in. I'm gonna go pee.
Knock it out.
Make sure to keep that in. That'll be really embarrassing.
Keep it in, my friends. Keep it in.
You're good.
All right. So you guys want to jump to the next one?
Sure. Let's go.
We're gonna do our Mr. Rogers. Won't you be my neighbor?
Neighborhood.
Got the vest on? You got the vest? Let's go. Let's play the song.
We're gonna talk about neighbors. Now, this has been on my list, and I was just thinking about this. You know why I'm fascinated with it? I think because one, at least people, the people that we know, the world that we live in, there's not too many of us that this topic doesn't directly affect in some way. But also because in a world of modern autonomy, let's say, right, we get to choose everything, what we do for a living, we get to choose our circle of friends, where we want to live. This is like one of the only things we don't really have any say over. It's a complete coin toss, right? It's a roll of the dice. It's a crapshoot. So what we're talking about is neighbors, and the fact of, we could either luck up and get good neighbors, or we go bust, right? And we get stuck with people that we don't like or that we can't get along with for whatever reason. So
snitch on you for smoking weed.
Snitch on you for smoking weed, for instance. Snitches, man. It's so crazy. So this is one thing, right? So because again, we can tailor make and customize nearly every aspect of our life, but this one thing, the people who reside around us, right? Whether we live in a home, whether we live in an apartment, a condo, whatever, we can't choose that. I thought about this 10 years ago when we bought our second house, and it is one of those things. You're controlling every aspect. You're controlling where we want to be, where we're going to settle down. It's a beautiful neighborhood. It's a great school district. We're going to get new furniture, right? Every aspect we're kind of customizing, but who knows who we're going to move next to? It could be a serial killer, right? It could be like the most unsavory people, or they could be the best people, right? But it's the one thing you pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for in our case, and just completely roll the dice, and maybe you get lucky, and maybe, you suffer miserably. So I wanted to turn it over to you guys and get your thoughts on that. I was thinking about this too. Like, I guess our early experiences with it oftentimes is growing up, right? Like, it occurs to me, like, I lived on a block with some of the most horrendous bullies, like people that would torture me, and my best friends. And the same for my parents. We would live on a block with people that I knew they really loved, neighbors and friends that became like family over the years. And then other neighbors that I would hear them, my parents weren't shit talkers specifically, but, I would hear them say like, oh, this one and that one, or, this one isn't, letting their cat poop in the yard. Like, so there's, you get those early experiences of like, okay, yeah, we didn't choose this. We just ended up together. And how can we make it work? And how can we be peaceful about it? And maybe we tolerate each other. Maybe even become friends. We could, operate as on a friendship level, or, maybe it just goes south quick. Maybe there's snoops, busybodies. Maybe there's land disputes, God forbid. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. I'll turn it over to you, Gene, first, and then I'll give you one funny neighbor story that I have on the way out. But Gene, let me turn it over to you for the neighbor thing. Talk to me about it, my friend.
Yeah, this is interesting because I've been living in DC for almost 8 years now, and it's always been in apartments. I've never lived in a house. Period. Like even when I was a childhood. It's like Obama. Like we grew up in condos, you know. And I did have neighborhood kids that I was friends with when I was a child. They were weird because they were my friends, but they were also like weirdly violent. So they would like punch me and like throw rocks at me, and like and I would do the same thing back. It was just weird. But these guys were my friends, though, and it's like, but we would make each other bleed for some reason. And then after that, yeah, it's very strange.
Lord of the Flies, yeah.
But then after that, I just never. The funny thing is, I just never have gotten to know any of my neighbors in my adult life. Because it's always been in condos. Like I said earlier, they're always snitching on me for smoking weed. But otherwise, like we just really never talk. I don't know my neighbors now. I have no idea who lives next to me. They slam the door really loud. That's the extent of what I know. And they probably know that I smoke weed. Thankfully, no one's snitching on me here in this building, but it's DC, everyone's cool here. But yeah, it's just this is interesting because I don't have a lot of experience with neighbors because I just don't talk to them. And
some would say the best kind of neighbor, by the way.
Definitely,
exactly. I just keep to myself, and hopefully they can mind their own business too.
That's the way, dude. That's the way. Seen and not heard.
Yeah, but if I lived in a suburb, then would I bring over a pie? Maybe. Because I want to play along, but that would be a new experience for me to knock on my neighbor's door and try to get to know them. Because I already know too many fucking people in my life, So I don't need to know the people that just happen to be next to me.
Amen.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad because that's all I have to say. Unless you have questions or other prompts or anything like that.
Well, you know what you remind me of, Gene? In this modern world, and it's kind of a sad comment, I think, on just the way society is now. I think if a neighbor moved into our neighborhood, like they were the newcomer, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. And they knocked on my door with a pie or some kind of gift or an offering, like a bottle of wine, we would, of course, act cordial and friendly, but we would think it was weird. And I think even the opposite, right? If you're coming into, if someone's coming into a new neighborhood and I brought them something, I think a lot of people we've adopted that sort of philosophy of like, just a good neighbor is one that's friendly and cordial from afar. Hi, neighbor, wave, but not intrusive and not, keeps their distance. Mm-hmm. So even if I brought a new neighbor a nice bottle of wine or a little gift basket or something and a little welcome to the neighborhood card, I think a lot of people, right or wrong, would perceive that as intrusive and sort of pushy and odd. And I think, like, even being from the Northeast, right? I've been going through this and I'm trying to break myself of feeling this way. Like, even when strangers say hello to you on a walk, it's weird. And it shouldn't really be like that. You know what I mean?
I think it's weird not to acknowledge someone when you're walking past them, personally.
But you know how we grew up, though? Like, if I'm walking in Manhattan.
Well, yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. If you're on the street, you're not acknowledging every single person. But if you're on like a path,
if you're
it's just you and the other person, I think it's weird not to
See, I think that's really weird too. But it's just the way it is a lot of the times. And a lot of times I think that has to do with just being plugged in. Even if you can't see it, they got their AirBuds on or whatever.
Yeah, but how cool. I don't know. I'm sorry to interrupt you. This bothers me because it's like, how much of a dickhead are you that you can't. Now, I'm not saying you. I'm saying the general person that has the earbuds in. Someone is you're in like just a path, like walking by each other. No one else is around, and you're just gonna look straight ahead and not acknowledge that person. Oh, you're fucking insane. That's psychopathic.
I acknowge folks.
I think it does.
I've been getting wearing hats, so I usually do a tip of the hat at least.
Right, like you don't have to be like, "Hey, how are you? What's going on here?" I would
just like the
or just be like,
just like
just be like, you have to acknowledge each other. I mean, I just think it's so strange. Yeah.
I get to the point though where I know people's demeanors, and maybe even in the Northeast, like it's drawn up like 50-50. So I shouldn't judge everybody, but it gets to the point where me personally, I'll speak for myself, like I feel like bugging somebody, you know what I mean? Which is kind of strange. And when you go to different parts of the country and of course different parts of the world, it's not necessarily like that everywhere. People are more cordial in, I think, an old school way, type of, Sunday best walking down the sidewalk, like Gene said, tip of the cap, howdy neighbor type thing. But, I think it is interesting because I think the dynamic is changing. And I'm certainly guilty of that too, where it's like, I'm a very friendly person and I'm kind, but I'm also somewhat introverted. So I am going to react to the kindness of a stranger, maybe not like how I should have, because I think we've been conditioned that way. You know what I mean? That we're just kind of like hands off. You know what I mean? Certainly not a dick. You certainly don't want the people that are uppity about the boundaries of their property and shit like that. And I've seen all of that. But it is interesting because it's almost even, it's hard to know how to be. And I think it's different for every case. Some people want that neighborly contact where it's like, let's get together for dinner every month type of thing, which I think is reasonable, right? If you get along with somebody and you could find things in common and all that kind of thing. But I think some neighbor, and I see all types. I'm just thinking on my cul-de-sac, I probably have a cross section of every different type. People that like will come up to me and be like, anything you ever need. And it's unwarranted. I didn't do anything for them. They're just that nice. Wow. You know what I mean? Wow. They're a little older probably because this neighborhood was built in the late 80s and some people, they're OG. So I think they kind of took me under their wing. Some people that still haven't said a word to me in 12 years that live 3 houses away. So you get all types and it's hard to know how to fit in to that. But I think the lesson in that is just, authentically and genuinely do you, right? It's like, don't worry about who you're bugging. It's just like, kind of like, take a page out of your own book. You proceed how you see fit. I can't operate in a circle based on how everybody else is acting, because maybe you don't agree with it.
What do you think, Cog? I want to know what your experience is.
It's a good one. Because I tried to analyze my experiences with it. Fun story, when I was young, we grew up in the projects in the South Bronx, and then my grandfather inherited a brownstone. I forgot how it happened, but we ended up moving it somewhere nice. So it's like one of the few, brownstones in the block, and that's kind of where most of my friends to this day know me from that house. It was like the Huxtable house, so to speak, right? You know what I'm saying? So what's crazy about it is when I was younger, and Colin would appreciate this, like I'm from the G.I. Joe and Transformers era, so I was young. I would come outside and I play with my, my toy. I got my G.I. Joe Kung Fu grip, got my Storm Shadow, got my Snake Eyes, and I'm outside. I'm having fun. I'm just making my own little story. It's my episode, my personal thing. And there was another kid right across doing the same thing, right? So just naturally, we just gravitated. And it's like whatever toys I got, we play with, that kind of stuff. And I'm from that era. So it was cool because his parents allowed me to play with him and vice versa. He ends up becoming, shout out to Corey Chapel, he ends up becoming my best friend. We get close. Then later on in life, like teenage years, his uncle marries my aunt. And now my best friend literally becomes my cousin. So this was like, wow. We like, we was the best. Like, we went to the way, like, it was, now obviously later on in life, they ain't together no more. But at that time, it was the coolest thing. Like, we were just like, we really family now. So that's like the ultimate positive part. Then as I get older, I kind of relate to G. Like, I'm a very private person. I don't really want to talk to you. I came from a hard day work and, I'm cordial. I'm nice. I'm not going to do the walk past you New York thing, act like you all know you. I'm not going to do that. But like some people I feel overextend themselves into my business. And, oh man, I saw you got, man, I got that TV. And I'm like, bro, you're not coming in my house. And you're not, no, like that's cool, respectfully, and then I don't know. I personally felt it was a lot of pocket watching and a lot of, oh, wow, you got this now. And I'm just like, I don't know. It was just, I had varying experiences, right? And then you do get the occasional to what Dagan is talking about for me. I remember when I first moved to Jersey City, like you get the occasional, like really nice, cordial. They looked out for you. Hey, man, I just want to let you know, hey, you left this open or we saw this. Is this yours? And you really appreciate that person, right? You're like, wow, that you really saved me on that one. Thank you. You know what I'm saying? You develop a friendship. But for the most part, I don't really want to know my neighbor. I really don't. Like, I'm happy living my life the way I'm living it and doing what I'm doing. And I guess the last point I'll say is because of the Huxtable era, I'm from the era where the older people sit on the stoop and everybody's watching everyone's business. And I hated that. I hated. Oh, look, he came in at 2 or 3 in the morning. Where was he at? Like, you know what I mean? And then that person's telling that person, like, get out my business. Like, I don't like that. Like, so I couldn't wait to get away, get my own place. Nobody knows what I'm doing. Come and go as I please and have my own little circle. So that's my story. I'm varied with it.
Yeah, I'm like you. It's why I can't have roommates. Because like, I come home from work and the roommate's like, "Oh, how was your day?" I was like, "I don't want to know about it, man." Yeah, you know? I don't want to check in with you. Are you my girlfriend? You know.
Facts. I'm with you, G.
It's true though. We're like video game characters, right? We have a life gauge.
Yes.
Let's say we have an energy bar, right? It's kind of inconsiderate to think I'm going to take up some of that energy bar for you. Like, you know what I mean? There's a lack of consideration with wanting to kind of suck up all your, like, a stranger's energy.
Self-awareness.
There's something it doesn't speak to me. Like, and it could be, I mean, it could be loneliness, right? It could be it could be really anything. But yeah, that's a thing that is tricky though. But the angel on my shoulder says, you know what, that might be a friend for life that you're kind of shrugging off. But I feel but the extroverted side, the devil side, just like pushes the angel off the shoulders. Like, dude, you want to go relax. You want to, if you're going to give your time to somebody, it's going to be the 2 kids or the wifey. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I again, in a self-critical way, I think I could get a little better with that. But it's true though, and maybe that's just life. Like, we only have this much, you know what I mean? So many slots in the life bar. So it's like, I can't give you 3. I can't give you 3 slices of the energy gauge. I just can't, It's like,
that goes back to the whole, I think, just being self-aware of how you, like, what you expect out of other people. I think I hate saying things like as New Yorkers, but I think like there's a culture in New York growing up about like the way you respect someone is by being very judicious with their time. So like you walk into the deli, you order, hey, how you doing? Can I please get a bacon, egg, and cheese, salt, pepper, ketchup, and this? And like, yeah, sure. They ring you up. All right, cool. Thank you very much. Stand aside.
Yes.
That's a sign of respect.
Yes.
Because there are other people waiting. This guy doesn't give a flying fuck about you. There are other things to do. Be aware and like be cordial and all that.
Fools at that time.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. And so I just feel like, to me, I think that's a big part of it with neighbors too. But it's funny, man, because obviously we talk about our childhood neighbors so much. I'm not even going to talk about them here, but because we talk about them on Knockback constantly. But in San Francisco, it was my only experience when I lived in the gay house, as I call it, with all the gay guys. The houses are all, city houses, like next to each other, like sharing walls. And this is near Geneva and Mission in San Francisco. And we had these like neighbors that the walls there are just very thin. They just are. I don't know why that is. I don't think it's that way in newer houses, but it is that way in older houses. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they intentionally don't insulate a lot of houses there because the weather is kind of perfect. You don't, like, a lot of people don't have AC and you really don't use the heat. Just kind of ride, right? And so I think a lot of it has to do with that, but a lot of noise comes through in a lot of situations with older houses, like pre-earthquake, like 1989 earthquake houses. So like the house was built after 1906 in the first earthquake, and these neighbors were just dickheads. They were like a couple. They were both nurses, and they were just rude. That was like there's nothing particular about it except for they used to smoke cigarettes and then throw their butts on the ground, and they would like tumble. I lived on a hill. They would tumble, as everyone did. They would tumble down the hill, and I would brush them with when I was cleaning up outside, back up into their place.
I love it.
So that was like about as, and I also a few times they would bang on the wall sometimes, and I remember turning my guitar amp around and just raging on it one day, like going nuts.
Aerosmith and Run DMC style, right?
Yeah, I was just like, I'm really a barcore.
Walk this way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's Colin ballad.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not playing power chords. That's too sophisticated for me. But but exactly like that. And then I lived in the same apartment for a really long time in San Francisco, and my neighbors I lived in the Sunset is very Chinese, and both of my neighbors were like off the boat Chinese families, and my landlord was off the boat Chinese, and the people across the street from me were off the boat Chinese. And so one neighbor, they were just this nice old couple. I don't think I said one word to them. They were always out in the backyard, like doing like stuff with the plants and whatever. We were nice. The other family, it was like there was like 25 people in the house. I don't know what the fuck was going on over there. It was like a mixed family. And I've said in the past, I remember making, I think it was on the old comedy button, the old show where I was like, it was like Jordan versus Bird in the backyard, like there, because they had a basketball hoop. And everyone had like the concrete, dude. At like 7 a.m, they'd be fucking going nuts back there.
That's
like,
awesome.
and so the story I've told, and it's so funny, is that they didn't speak very good English. The younger ones did, but like the older parents, grandparents really didn't speak English. And I remember going out, like literally walking out in my boxers, like onto my balcony and like my t-shirt, and the guy was out there with a bunch of people, and I'm like, I'm like, it's 8 a.m, and the guy turns around and says, "Good morning." Like one of the older guys.
It's the best thing he could have said.
And I just had to accept it and walk back in.
That's a genius. That guy's a genius. You got to give him credit.
Like, I don't know if he was like being, like some people pretend they don't speak English, which is something I experienced a lot as well. Like where it's, some people pretend they don't understand you or whatever. But I don't know if he was just being a dickhead.
I'd be like, no English,
Yeah, exactly.
only Chinese. I'm not even Chinese, but whatever.
And the exact opposite happens to Ramon, who was on the show a few weeks ago, where like everyone assumes he just speaks Spanish and just starts speaking it to him, like in Los Angeles, because it's like such,
right.
And he's like, I have no idea what you're saying.
LA for sure.
It's awesome.
But and then so. I lived in a very nice like commercial unit in LA. Everyone just was like short leases and kept to themselves, no issues there. And then
that was a nice place.
It was really nice. It was twice as costly as my house. Like, so that's weird. But here, so I moved to the suburbs intentionally, and I wanted to get out of the city, and I needed to have some normalcy, reconnect with the Long Island growing up kind of situation as best I could. And it's interesting because there's a total hierarchy and politics to my neighborhood. There definitely is. And I'm not really part of it. Like I'm not on Nextdoor. I'm not on the Facebook group. We have like the HOA. There's like, I don't know how many houses. It's gotta be 1,000 houses in our HOA or something. So there's like a magazine and shit. And like,
there's a lot of homes.
Yeah. It's like, huge. And it's just a lot of things. Like there's just like, basically travel teams for all these different things and just a lot of social shit going on like in our neighborhoods, like a neighborhood thing for like, for soccer and all I don't know what the fuck's going on. So I'm not involved in any of that stuff at all, but there is in like my little area, because there's all like subdivisions basically in my little area of probably 50 houses or something like that. There are little cliques and groups of people that are definitely cool with each other. Like all the people that they call it the back loop, because it's like a back loop around our neighborhood. Those people are all like thick as thieves with each other. They have parties and like block parties, and they invite us. And they're actually the neighbors I brought up in the past where I'm like, there's some of them I don't think like me very much because I'm not social with them. They invite, and I feel bad. They've invited me to things a million times, and I'm like, thanks anyway. Like come have a beer or watch the game, do this. And I'm like, I don't. To Cog's point, I'm like, I'm sure you're really nice people. Actually, I'm positive you are. You're obviously really nice people. I see you. I'm walking the dogs. We say hello. But I don't know that I want to get to this level with you, except for I did try everyone has kids in my neighborhood. There's a fucking million kids in my neighborhood, right? Which is totally fine. And I like the sounds of like kids playing, the normalcy of it. It feels very middle America. I dig it. It's very different than San Francisco or LA. And so I'm feeling that. But you don't really have a lot to relate to with parents with kids, and their kids are with the other kids. And that's how people kind of make their connections. We're cognizant of that. So neighbors moved in across the street from us, and they're a couple, they're a lesbian couple, and they're really nice. And I really like them a lot. And I've kind of tried to make an effort with them over the last year or so. And it's not really reciprocated, like it's kind of reciprocated, but not really reciprocated. And so, I've also been rejected in trying to be, I guess, more friendly with people in some way as well. But generally speaking, I do know to keep to myself. I'm trying to learn people's names. I actually start writing them on a list on I started writing a list of names on my fridge. It's like a fucking kill list. It sounds like crazy.
Smart.
But but when I meet people, because there's just so many people and I forget their names, and I damn well know no one knows my name. So, which is totally fine. I don't like, there's a neighbor on one side of me that has kids and we're really friendly with them when we always say hello, but I'm like, you definitely don't know my name. Like, And that's fine. But I want to see how long we can push this. We've lived next to each other for 3 years. So let's see how far we can push this thing. But yeah, generally speaking, I think I just haven't bought into the whole neighbor dynamic too much. Here's the thing is I try to be friendly. I'm overly friendly. Not in your face, stopping the talk kind of shit. But I'll wave at every car. I don't know who the fuck you are. It could be the FedEx person. It could be some rando turning around. I'm going to wave. No risks, right? There's no risk. It's like Pascal's wager of believing in God. Like there's nothing to risk by just waving at someone, right? Yeah. Unless what the fuck do you wave at me? And they shoot you down or something like that. So I try to be friendly. Like that's the guy that waves. He's always acknowledges. He's not trying to be a dickhead. And then when I see people, I try to say, hello, how you doing? And sometimes people don't even say anything back to you. And I try to be really friendly to the kids in the neighborhood. Like, just say hello, hey, they're walking back from I'm out with the dogs. They're walking back from the bus. Like, hey guys, how you doing? And what I've noticed is that they are friendlier to me. Like they're friendly, like generally speaking. And so I try to put that air out there that I'm not more social than I am, but that it's cool. I want to just be a good neighbor. I want to be quiet and chill. I want to be respectful. I keep my yard really nice. I don't play my drums late. I try to, we didn't get a natural gas generator, which we wanted to get because it would have to be too close to our neighbor's house. Not very close, but close enough where I remember saying this to Dagan on Knockback. Yeah. It would literally be the power would go out and the neighbors would hear as this thing kicked on, and it gave us electricity and then all of our lights would pop on. And I'm that would be, but that was me being that would be such a dickheaded thing to do. But I think a lot of people would be I'm going to have my fucking natural gas generator. It's on my yard. But me, I'm it's 15 feet away from these people's houses because it has to be a certain amount away from our own house as well. And so I'm that sucks. That would be so rude, And, but I think a lot of people wouldn't think that way. So I try to put that out there to just take care of my yard, be nice to people, be cordial, but I'm not trying to be too social. And then when I try to kind of make the social attempt, it kind of got shot down a little bit, but that's okay. Not shot down. It's just who knows what's going on in their lives. I have no fucking idea. I mean, they can be busy with, they actually just had a kid themselves, but we'll try to text, be you want to have a drink? You want to do this? Lent them a PS4 to play with or whatever.
Oh, that's huge.
All right.
Wow.
We're just trying to be nice. Just trying to be find at least one neighbor that I can be let's try to be neighborly with each other. But I don't know.
Well, this is the life you wanted. You wanted to live in the suburbs, right? So
exactly.
Live that life.
Right. I don't need anyone bringing me a fucking lasagna like it's Sopranos when someone dies or something like that. I don't need any of that sort. I don't need any of that sort of thing. And I do think that would be weird. But I did say too that I met a neighbor down the street from me, when we're walking the dogs, on another street, who his name's Kevin. He's a really nice guy, and he invited me to his holiday party randomly. But then I couldn't RSVP. I RSVP'd and was I can't go. There was a conflict or whatever. But then we emailed, and then I emailed him again because he was actually in the neighborhood magazine. He was just randomly in it. So I was oh, dude, I saw him, but I never heard back from him. So I don't know if I put him off or. So this is the kind of shit, when you introduce social connections in your life, these are the kinds of things that you have to deal with. That's why it resonates with me so much. I say it all the time. I know enough people. There are people I love in my life that I don't get, including people on the show that don't get nearly enough of my time. I'm not going to make new social links like this is Persona, I got a 10 better to the, it would almost be beyond comprehension for me to even do that when I'm barely talking to people in my life. Some people that I care about, what does that say about them? So you got to be more focused on that. But is there anything else you wanted to say, Dick?
Yeah, I'll tell you guys a funny story about one. I was just thinking about funny neighbors, and I love what you guys were saying about, what Gene was saying earlier about the kids and throwing rocks and everything, because I've definitely told this story on Knockback, but when we moved out to Eastern Long Island way before Colin was a twinkle in my parents' eye, I was 4. And so it was just me and my next oldest sister at that time, before it was the 4 of us. We had just moved. It was still very much, it was very rural, still very much farmland out there. But we were young, so we weren't allowed in that development. We weren't allowed on the next block. Our purview was the block, and that was it. So the kids our age that lived behind us were, a mystery to us. We were intrigued because we weren't able to get to know these kids. We could just see them from afar. Our backyards faced each other. And we called, for whatever reason, we just adopted that they were bad kids, and we called them the bad ones. And we had straight up rock fights with them. It was just like completely, it was very 70s. Like this would only happen in the 70s, right? It just defied logic. Like we would like waging lethal warfare against each other, like throwing full on rocks at each other. I don't know how no one died. It doesn't make any sense at all. So I always remember the bad one. And then of course, like these are the kids who I later, like by the time we're in first or second grade, like these were all like the kids I went to school with, like through, K through 12. But back then, you kind of develop like an obsession with them because they're like, oh, who are those strange kids behind us? Because there's boundaries when you're little. So I always remember the bad ones. And I don't know, again, like how do we live? How did no one lose an eye? I don't know. Like I'd be mortified if my kids did that.
Oh my God, dude.
The property damage and stuff that could happen, like the cars and the houses and the collateral damage. I'm telling you, that stuff stopped in 1980. Like it didn't. That was so I was so happy to be around for the 70s because that was a crazy decade. Like anything went still. It wasn't like the 50s and the 60s just became, I think everything culminated in the 70s. It was like Mad Max to be a kid in the 70s. But so that was funny. And then the other thing I wanted to throw it back to Gene especially, but all you guys could probably talk to this. And that's cooking smells in an apartment building. I guess it starts with dorms, but apartment building. Why is it, or is it just me, that it could literally be like a dream kitchen with Bobby Flay, Chef Morimoto, and Julia Child cooking like the most delicious thing ever? If it's not my family, it's somebody else's apartment or somebody else's dorm, it just smells like shit.
That's so weird.
Other people's cooking smells are bad. Unless if I walked in and knew it was my mom making gravy, right? That would be a different story. But knowing that somebody else's, and this is a food person we're talking about.
That's a hang up, I think, for you.
You think that's just me?
I think so. I mean, I smell, I would smell things all the time. Like sometimes it smells like shit, but a lot of times it's like, wow, someone's making something really tasty right now. Or
I never thought of
it. Just be like really jealous of that house.
Yeah. Oh, all right. So that's me. That's my own.
That's a hang up.
That's a hang up. That's a tick. Yeah. That's a tick. All right. So I'll tell you guys a funny story about a neighbor I have right now. Actually, she's a friend, but she's a friend of one of our, she's the mother of one of our daughter's friends. But the funny thing about this woman is she's really nice. She's from New York originally. So is her husband. And they moved here right before we did. But the thing about them is, or her specifically, is she tells these crazy stories about things that go on in the neighborhood that are just barely within the realm of possibility. Like she'll tell what seems like a tall tale, just the tiniest bit credible. It's the weirdest thing. Like, so in other words, you want to not believe her, but there's a little sliver in there that it could be true. And it always is something that affects everybody in the neighborhood. Like the first one that she did years ago is that she saw a mountain lion in her backyard, right? Now, there are mountain lions in Pennsylvania, hours from here. There are tales that once in a while they could make same thing with bears. Like they can make their way down on these narrow tracts of woodland from the Poconos down to where we live in southeastern Pennsylvania. But it's not only is it not common, it's happened like twice in the last 200 years or something. So she'll always tell a story that everybody wants to poo-poo, but you can't 100% poo-poo it. You could like 99.99% poo-poo it. It's almost like she's egging everybody on. Like she's not just being a crazy person, like she's kind of a genius because she's just getting everybody's goat. You know what I mean? She did the same thing with like a blue light. She swore like there was a blue light one night. And like, what she was insinuating was there's some sort of alien thing. But again, like the small things that we can't debunk it completely. But we could just about debunk it because she's kind of a crazy person. This is the same. She was a cop. She's an ex-cop. She pulled a gun on a guy that she thought was casing the neighborhood. She followed him out of the neighborhood into the parking lot of like our local elementary school and took her gun and put it to his head and said, "You can't come back here." Like you can never that. And I know because she reminds me of people that I grew up with, like some of my aunt's friends growing up and stuff like that. Like she's a little bit, she's got a little bit, she's a really cool person, very nice, very cordial, but she's got maybe she's one sandwich short of a picnic.
But she told you that story, so how can you believe it?
Well, that's the other thing. And then it's like, we'll always have one neighbor to kind of confirm or deny, but like not everybody knows. I think she did the same thing with a story about a bear, which for years I thought was true. She said she had come home. The kids were really little at that time. They were like, we had just moved here. And she said a bear was holing up in the fort of somebody's, playground, like the wooden playgrounds that we have in the backyard with the slide and the swings and everything, that a bear kind of climbed the ladder to a fort and was just like hanging out in there. For years, I thought this was true. And then another one of my neighbors was like, one day it just came up in conversation and he was shaking his head. He's like, Dagan, that wasn't true. That didn't happen. She just told everybody that. Like nobody else saw that. It was like supposedly in broad daylight before the kids got home. So I thought it's always interesting. Like, you have good neighbors, you have bad neighbors. Sometimes you just have colorful, entertaining neighbors. And that's okay. It's if you're going to make my life a little bit more entertaining and a little more exciting, have at it. It's harmless ultimately,
level,
right?
Except
for the guy that wasn't casing the neighborhood, that was probably just like, oh my God.
She needs to calm down.
Yes, she's tough.
I don't believe that I don't believe that she held the gun to the guy's head.
I don't know.
I'm calling her bullshit. What's her name? Let's call her out right now. Tell me your name.
I just called her Agatha for some reason.
Agatha.
I was like, yeah.
You know what's funny? Like, I just hope that there's the one story that's just a little too far-fetched, that we could finally just like apply that to everything and be like, all right, it's been bullshit a lot. There's always that strategic, little intonation that's like, all right, maybe, I don't know. But then it also builds when there's a new story every 2 months. It's like, how many of these extraordinary things could pop? You know what I mean? So that sort of detracts from maybe the truthfulness a little bit. I don't know. I'll keep you guys posted. Either way, we'll see what happens with the next. There'll be another story before the spring's out, I'm sure.
All right. Let's move on to the final topic. I'm curious what you guys make of this one. It's come up recently. Actually, I couldn't. Patreon's DMing system is so bad, but someone had recommended this topic, actually. And I was like, that's actually not a bad idea. So I decided to take it, which is the idea of gatekeeping. And we'll end our Constellation conversation this week with this. I was curious what you guys think of this idea of gatekeeping. And I guess particularly I wanted to ask, have you ever been victimized by gatekeeping? Have you ever employed a gatekeeping? How do you feel about it in certain respects? How do you even define it? For me, I feel like gatekeeping has, I don't want to say it's become in vogue, because I don't think that that's necessarily true, but it's become more acceptable to talk about it in a positive and constructive way. In other words, protecting hobbies and spaces from people that seek to corrupt them in some specific way. And I think you've really seen this come to a head in a lot of ways with paper and pencil RPGs, like tabletop RPGs, and a lot of other things where people are really rebelling against this idea of significant change, like social change and politics, just being wedged into all these different things in that specific angle, which I don't really know anything about. But in our space, I look at gatekeeping as a potential positive, but not something that can always be positive. So, for instance, if we better gatekept the PlayStation ecosystem, then I think in some way we would have even more of the single player games that we all love, as opposed to what's going on and what's coming up and what Sony's looking at to make more money. But that's not really a practical way to gatekeep, because they're going to seek the money. People are going to find the system. People are going to find the economy and interact with it in that way. And so the other thing I was just thinking about was, I guess the place I've been a gatekeeper in my life is in terms of my own community. And I was like this and my other places of employ as well, but I've been like this a lot with The Last Stand, where like I actively do gatekeep this place. I do tell people that are rude to other people or mean-spirited or whatever. I tell them to their faces as best as I can in a digital way, like, I don't want your money, you're gone, and boot them out, ban them from Discord, kick them out of Patreon. I mean, these are people that pay. And they think that they can pay and be abusive to others, be abusive to my staff, be abusive to me. And that just doesn't fly. And so I've gatekept that to try to keep the, not politically or ideologically pure in any way, but to try to keep it as positive as possible. If you are a rabble rouser or trying to just be a dickhead, then I don't really want you here. And I think that that's a positive form of gatekeeping. But then I think there is gatekeeping where people seek to keep others out of spaces that they don't think they belong into for whatever reason. And I think that that's inherently a negative. So I just wanted to know what this word even kind of conjured to mind. Cog, I'm curious to go to you first. What comes to mind for you with the term gatekeeping, and have you employed it? Have you been victimized by it? Talk to me.
Great topic. I think what comes to mind for me is, as I've gotten older, it's been more of a situation where like I want to protect what I consider the purity of things, right? And like you get older, you get like, you young kids don't know kind of energy. And I've been in that bag. So like for example, like in gaming, like for example, like Tekken is coming out right now, right? The new Tekken 8, and I'm super pumped. And you know, FGC, like Tekken means everything to me. And one of the reasons why it means so much to me is because I come from the era where like me, King, Saul, we would go downtown or China, we would get the kung fu flicks, what we call the Run Shaw, the Bruce Lee joints, and we would watch them, and we had such an appreciation for martial arts, the purity of it. And I felt like Tekken closely represented that, right? So now my beloved genre is not really the popular one as time has gone on. And I think part of me is like, you know, I got to show these kids like this is what it is. You know, I do this with certain things like martial arts, fighting, hip hop. You know, I'm from the era of the lyricist. You know, you go to the freestyle, the open mic, and a guy is really telling a story. It's poetic, it's poetry, as opposed to what I consider now the mumble rap. It's very simple. The beat is melodic. It may be bump, but I don't feel you saying anything, right? So I've become a gatekeeper in that respect. So I gatekeep the things I'm super passionate about because I feel like they're not getting the attention and recognition they deserve, right? And it's kind of like my self-imposed purity of things kind of thing. So the last thing is on the opposite side, I'm trying to think of scenarios where like things have been kept away from me. And I guess during my brief, college run, I always felt like there were groups that I thought were like really cool and I wanted to, either get a part of. And for whatever reason, what I'm saying, I wasn't accepted into that group or what have you. And I think for me, I've always been like, okay, cool. Y'all don't rock with me. I'm going to do my own thing and I'm going to show you kind of like, that's been my like retaliatory kind of way. Like I'm going to create my own thing. And I know friends of mine who got very resentful where they were like, yo, they kicked me out, or whatever. And I've learned that one, like you're not going to be accepted by everyone and that's cool. And there's another part of me. Yeah, I do have a spirit like I'm going to show you. Like you messed up. You should have. Like you should have gave me a consideration. And I think where you resonate, Colin, with this is that I'm going to kill you with my success then, because now you're going to know by not even giving me an opportunity or a chance. This is what you missed out. You could have been a part of this. Kind of thing. I mean, look, I do have a petty side. I'm not going to lie. There is a little petty in me to get back when I feel I was wronged or, gatekeeped, what I'm saying? Kind of get kept kind of thing.
Dude,
so,
it's like the idea that you kind of revel in other people, not other people, but like your enemy's misery in some sense, right? Like
in some sense.
But I think that that's what, the idea of, because it's not active. I don't need to tell you, but I do feel it. And I am sending you negative energy, like, but I don't need to verbalize it, right? Like you don't need to say that. It speaks for itself, right? It speaks for itself.
Ideally, it should speak for itself. Yes.
Exactly. They got to wake up and they got to look at it. And then they will know. So that's just me. Again, it's a great topic. I'm very curious about, you guys. I'm curious with Gene on this one. I'm very curious with Gene with gatekeeping and how he feels about this. So any way you take it, but this is a fun topic.
Yeah, right on.
When I saw Colin pitch this, I was like, is this about The Last of Us?
No, it's too late to gatekeep The Last of Us. What's fun about The Last of Us is that it's fun seeing people grapple with all of its quandaries for the first time,
Again,
like the ending, especially. I think you wrote about that or you shared something or something. I saw something.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like 10 years later, watching people deal with the exact things that we were writing about in the games press at that time, and more people taking it seriously. Too late.
Too late. When I think about gatekeeping, I think about games a lot, because there's always this phrase that bothers me, that games should be for everyone. And it's like, okay, playing video games should be for everyone. Yes. Accessibility, all that stuff. Absolutely. But not every game is for everyone. Right. I'm sorry,
Ooh,
and then, I've heard this term about accessibility, and Jim Stephanie Sterling, they had a piece about accessibility and everything like that. And they argued, why couldn't every game be for everyone? You know why? Because not everyone is the same. Different artists are going to have different visions. You simply cannot enforce what someone wants to create. I'm sorry. You just cannot do that. So if the Elden Ring folks or FromSoft folks do not want to put in an easy mode, I'm sorry. Like you're just going to have to deal with it. And you're just going to have to somehow move on to another game and play some other game, play another Souls-like or something that's a little easier. Play fucking Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's a little easier, and you can get used to that, But I'm sorry, you just can't promise that everything will be for everyone, because the reality is that there are people in this world. That's it. There are different people in this world, and they're going to want to make different things for different people. In terms of whether I've been gatekept, I don't think I have. I've always infiltrated every community that I've always wanted to be a part of. When I wanted to be a real club rat, that was no problem. I was able to just go into the club, and it's like I don't look like the guy who would just be in the club all the time, but that was part of my appeal. That I was just this nerd, and I was buying bottle service and doing all that.
I love this. I
need a book, Gene. We need a Gene.
We need a book, bro.
We need at least one book.
I'm sorry. Continue.
A lot of people tell me that. Yeah. I've never been gatekept from different drug communities. Back to the weed conversation. When people would say does this guy even smoke weed? And they would come into my dorm room, and they would see Led Zeppelin, Bob Marley posters and everything like this. Of course, this guy fucking smokes weed. What are we talking about? But there was that interesting dynamic there where it's okay, well, we'll see what this guy got. I'm glad that you brought up martial arts, Cog, because that also reminded me of this controversy of when Sifu came out, right?
Yes.
And then there was all these stories about why didn't they get an Asian martial artist to advise on Sifu? You guys, if you're saying that, then you're basically gatekeeping martial arts, because martial arts is a sport. The white guy, the black belt white guy that's training the Sifu guy, the French guy, he has already been given permission to spread the word of martial arts internationally by the Chinese dude that taught him. Like he has a black belt. He literally has a license to do this. He is an expert. He's in France. He's gonna be white. I'm sorry, but that's gonna happen. So does this mean that every basketball game needs to be made by white people because James Naismith created it? What's going on there? So I mean, those are my immediate thoughts when I hear about gatekeeping. I think about the Marvel community and DC community and how
the Marvel community should have done a better job of gatekeeping itself, because
it's interesting because it's Star Wars, absolutely. Oh my God, Star Wars should have done a better job at gatekeeping, but they didn't want to do that. To your point again, Colin, it's about the money. They're going to chase that money. They're going to chase that quote unquote broader audience. Look what happened to Halo. But Halo didn't want to gatekeep Halo, so they made Master Chief fuck. Yeah,
it's true. They did do that, and to me, I think about it in terms of. Yeah, there were these times where I think gatekeeping would have probably benefited the various products, but it was just this is an inexorable thing. And it goes back, this is like a theme for all these topics, which is not intentional for me, but it's about just the silence of feeling a certain way, but not having to express it. So when someone says to me, oh, the Star Wars episode 8, or I read one of these things about how good Star Wars episode is, I just don't take you seriously about Star Wars at all, you know? And then that's your prerogative. You don't need to know that I feel that way about you. I don't need to express it. And so I'm doing kind of more of a mental gatekeeping where I'm like, someone else might take you totally seriously, and that's their prerogative. They're a human and they can have their own experience with it. But for me, you say a certain thing and I put you in a certain bucket. I just don't need to really personally express it any further. And I think that that's an important thing too. So I guess I'm mentally gatekeeping, but I just don't feel like I need to, I don't feel like I need to categorize people and keep them out of things per se. Although I love the idea of course, gaming is not for everyone, you know, or I'm sorry, gaming is for everyone, but individual games rather are not for everyone. That's natural. And we tried it with Habroxia too. We tried to, at Lilymo, we tried to make it as easy as possible to break it, to make it as obvious, to make it as accessible as possible. And that wasn't even obvious to people who would complain about how hard it was. And I'm like, how hard can a game be that lets you grind infinite credits if you want to and buy all of the upgrades immediately? If you want to make it easier for yourself, do the work to make it easier for yourself. But like people want to even just be given the bridge to making it easier for themselves. Like, Jesus Christ, you can't even do your own level of work. So it was a lesson learned for us as well. But Dig, I'm curious what you think about gatekeeping.
I got to get your guys' input on this one. I thought a lot about this. I think about this one pretty often, I think. So for me, it's always been this way. And I think it defies explanation in some way. Maybe I got to do a little soul searching with this. But once something I like reaches a certain level of popularity or penetration, whatever you want to say. Oh. Or at least to my own perception, you know, I start automatically stepping away from it. Now, I don't think I've ever been guilty of like browbeating or discouraging others or raising some kind of barrier for entry to something, but I just tend to move on. And I feel like this happens when I sense that something's just getting overcrowded. And I think that's, for me, I think naturally a big part of the draw is just the thrill of the hunt for me. Maybe that speaks to my generation or just being an old school manga or anime mark or something, but feeling like you're in on a secret and feeling like you're in on something special. And again, like, it's kind of an elitist way to feel. I don't feel great about being that way, but I have to cop to like really feeling that way about the things I really care about, whether that's a book or a comic or a TV show or a movie. Enjoying something just before it becomes oversaturated, I think, especially nowadays in today's like social media climate, you know, before it's picked apart, before it's analyzed to death, before it's over merchandised, you know, and shows up in all the big box stores. I was thinking about this with Dragon Ball. I loved Dragon Ball even before I left for college, but I'll just tell you, and maybe this is being an old school dude, but I'll take 1993 Dragon Ball over 2023 Dragon Ball any day of the week, you know? And I think there's just something about it that even like defies explanation. And I think what I end up doing is I just step away. And there's a couple of weird things about it. Oddly, I tend to like things. I tend to be attracted to things naturally that maintain a sort of cult following and never go beyond that, which is really strange. And then the second thing is, I don't know if some roundabout way, I'm sort of secretly, not so secretly rooting for something to stay small and manageable and under the radar, right? Because I don't want to, once it becomes big, I think about this with Akira a lot. They keep threatening this live action movie, right?
Oh,
and
threatening.
I just keep thinking, I'm not gonna browbeat people. It's like the Michael Bay Transformers thing, right? Like it or love it, I hate it. But
same. I'm
not gonna browbeat people for liking it. I'm just gonna leave it. You know what I mean? So I don't want to leave Akira fandom because I'll just walk away from it, you know? So there's sort of some of it, like, again, it defies logic because I'm like,
it's hipsterish.
I mean, it is hipsterish.
Which is fine. I'm a hipster with stuff too. That's fine.
And it's also not logical because I'm depriving myself of that thing. You know what I mean? Like, if Akira is going to lose a lot of shine for me if they do a live action film, even if it's good. That doesn't really even make that much sense. I just think that's such a big part of who I am. And I think nerd culture is kind of like woven into my fabric. And I think it's just such a big part of me that's just the way it is with certain things. I think about that with Akira. I think about that with like indie comics of the 90s. I certainly feel this way about things like Calvin and Hobbes, where it's like, I wasn't necessarily day one on all these things, but something I have a rich history with that's just kind of bound up with my soul. You know what I mean? And I don't do it to be a dick. I just naturally feel that way. It is weird though. When I look at like being a fan of things, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of things that never really were able to breach the surface as far as like being on the radar. You know, even with Calvin and Hobbes and Morrison pulling out early before he could get merchandise, like I loved Calvin and Hobbes way before he made that decision. Why was I attracted to that? You know what I mean? So it's some weird thing bound up with my psychology, I think. And there's also things like music where I don't get that way with. Like I think of like De La Soul, like my favorite band of all time, right? My favorite rap group of all time.
3 Fight High Rising.
Oh my God, so good.
De La Soul was dead, you know?
But I always rooted for them to be bigger, right? But it's the same thing. Like why is De La Soul any different than Akira or Calvin and Hobbes or Jeff Smith's Bone or something like that? Like I even think about it in recent parlance, like the Gorillaz movie was pulled off Netflix's development slate. And I was psyched because, first of all, Damon Albarn and Jamie Hewlett don't need the money. So I don't need to root for those guys. They're already millionaires many times over. Second of all, there's something kind of cool about the Gorillaz, the Gorillaz fiction that lends itself to some kind of mystique. I don't need to see a full-length Gorillaz movie. I don't need to see 2 hours worth of Gorillaz. I think that would ruin it. So when Netflix pulled it because of, money issues, it's always about the bottom line. I was psyched because I don't want to feel like, because I'm gatekeeping Gorillaz is basically it's basically let's call it what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. I think for me it's this acceptance that I guess I just don't have the agency or control or presumptive control over handling the way something is, or to control the way something is handled. So for example is Star Wars, right? Which always comes up. Everyone always hates when we talk about Star Wars. But the reality is that Star Wars never comes up in my life, ever. Right. It only comes up on these shows. Because I'm done with Star Wars. I'm totally done with it. And I'm done with Star Wars. And I get frustrated when people are like, still to this day, and I appreciate you guys, but DMing me, you got to watch Andor. You should watch this. I'm like, I don't think you're listening. You got to play Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And so I'm like, you're not listening. I am done with this. I'm done with it. I don't want it anymore. It's different. You've ruined it. You've allowed it to be ruined. I was quiet as I always am about these things, as quiet as I'm going to be, but it happened. Right. The world doesn't revolve around me, but I'm done with this. Yeah. I don't want to, I'm not going to watch one more ounce of this shit. It's the same thing I feel about, frankly, Game of Thrones with House of the Dragon, where I'm like, you didn't even end the real show right. I don't give a shit about this.
You're not entitled to this.
And so it's not so much gatekeeping, I guess, it's just I've made my own little rule set. A good example is with PlayStation trophies. Anyone can get them, and there's just 4 varieties of them, and there's really hard bronzes and really easy ones, and laughable platinums and platinums that are virtually impossible. But they all are the same. And what you do is, to see a person's legitimacy, you go into their trophy list and you see what they actually have. And that to me is another form of mental gatekeeping, where if you have all of these like 5-minute platinum trophies, it's a joke. It's so stupid. Like, you're a clown. Why would you do that? That
was me on Xbox. I'm sorry.
Well, no, you didn't.
I played the King Kong game just for
the game. The era of the King Kong, dude. King Kong is quaint. I mean, you still had to beat it. Yeah.
You still had to beat it. Yes.
Like, you can get these platinums in these 1,000 achievement games in literally like 2 or 3 minutes. Some of them, So what's so funny is that King Kong, that was a joke, but that's fine. I mean, compared to what's going on today, and. For me, but to me, I look at it. So I don't look at your trophy list or your number. Rather, I look at your list. But the thing is in my mind, I'm making the differentiation. I don't necessarily have to express that you're fake. I just feel that way. That's it.
I think part of our age comes with it, because these days, Gen Z and younger millennials, they have no problem with selling out. That, like, selling out is a virtue in this day and age. but back in the 70s, the Who sellout, like they were making fun of selling out. I'm wearing a Nirvana shirt. Kurt Cobain didn't want to sell out, but he did. And then look what he did. Look what that did to his psyche.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm 41. I'm still of that era of like selling out is like a bad thing. So like when I do see like the Gorillaz, like I'm glad that the Gorillaz continue to. I'm also with you that I'm glad that the Gorillaz and Jamie Hewlett and Damon Albarn are still just releasing albums that are very experimental and they have these cool videos and that's it. They're still doing the same thing,
Yep. Amen.
I wouldn't want them to have a feature film. That'd be weird to me, and if they had an Apple Plus movie made about gorillas, I'd be like, that's so bizarre.
Yeah, it's weird.
You're selling out. You're selling out.
Yeah, that's like the ultimate move, the ultimate sellout move.
Yeah. So that's why PlayStation getting into all these live service games. They're like 10 live service games. Like you guys have sold out.
It's inevitable. That's why I was saying maybe we should have better gatekept PlayStation, but it probably wouldn't have worked. Right. And anyway, and that's why I just try to be, I just try to reiterate to these people, be as judgmental and as assholish as you want in your mind. You just don't need to express it because you got to like have a certain, like there's a certain decency that's expected. I think like if someone wants to try something that's new or try something that's experimental. When I started listening to 311 as a 12-year-old, when their third record came out, I'm sure all the stoners in college would have thought that was fucking ridiculous, and it probably was. But they did. I wasn't gatekept out of that. I was embraced, and I try to do the same thing for other things too. I just try to gatekeep my own community, just to keep. You can't keep all the assholes out, and a lot of people are borderline with that stuff, and you don't really want to judge them for that. Who the hell knows? But you can at least keep the most extreme versions of what you don't want out of your community. And then when things get corrupted, like I said with you with Transformers Dag or me with Star Wars, it's like I'm done, dude. I'm out. Like you've totally lost me. And people are saying, because we're slowly getting through the MCU movies, where people are like, dude, Colin's already fed up with Iron Man 2. Like he is going to hate this shit. Like people are like, he is going to hate. It's almost not even going to be fun for him.
They think it's a downward trajectory.
Yeah, I'm like, we'll see.
I don't know about that.
But
that I don't know. Mm-hmm. Star Wars, I could understand what you guys are saying because it was just too much too fast. That's it. It could have all been great. It's just like historically Star Wars, that wasn't the formula. It was it was slowly, thoughtfully sort of doled out. We're able to digest things. I think the model, even if the content, you may love it or hate it, I just think the model, the saturation, just it doesn't fit.
Dude, if I was 10, I'd love it.
That's the thing.
If I was 16, I'd probably love it. But
it's a generational perspective. I think you know what you reminded me of when you were just talking, Colin? I never thought of it this way before. Because I certainly cop to gatekeeping, and I think you're right. I think it's a base human tendency to feel that way, especially in nerd culture. I think for us guys and gals, but I think if we treat it this way, right? Like remember growing up, you wanted to hang out with the big kids, right? You wanted to hang out with the older kids, but there was a vetting period, man. You weren't just getting with the older kids. They would razz you. They would kind of test your limits, right? Test your loyalty. They would tease you. You would go home crying. Like if you kept coming back though, eventually, unless those dudes were completely heartless, you were going to get folded into the crew. Right. Or the same thing with skating. You want to skate the mini ramp with the older kids. Like they're going to snake you. They're going to do all kinds of things. You have to kind of build up a thick skin. Eventually you're going to get accepted into the orbit. Right. Maybe gatekeeping should be more like that. It's like, well, test how badly do you want it? And it's kind of sad to say because I remember, like, I found out about Attack on Titan, albeit many years ago, through a YouTuber. You know what I mean? If he was gatekeeping Attack on Titan, he wouldn't have created that video, and I wouldn't have found out about the manga. I think about even bands I discovered through friends. Like, they were like, dude, you like nostalgic, like, trip-hoppy type electronic music? You got to check out Boards of Canada. And, like, they turned me on to a whole, not only Boards of Canada's catalog, but that whole style of music. If that dude was gatekeeping Boards of Canada, I would have never discovered Boards of Canada, So it is kind of sad. I wonder, I gotta admit, I don't know if I'm the same way. If I really, again, like there's certain things that I don't feel protective of. Like I love De La Soul with all my heart, but I feel like I want to spread the gospel. There's other things that I'm just like, I don't know. That's for me. I don't know if that's for you.
I have to admit though too, Dag, what's interesting about this is that I don't know that there are many things that I liked very early that ended up being popular where you would even gatekeep them. There are things where I'm surprised. Like I'm authentically surprised a band, and I say this all the time, a band like Dredge wasn't huge. Like it is shocking to me, but it didn't happen. And that would be, so I'm a little bit hipsterish with that kind of stuff, but it's almost like I've never been enough of a tastemaker to even be the first one on the scene, as it were. So people would say that about some games on PlayStation and PSN games, especially back in the day, and some smaller PS3 and PS4 titles, but that's about as close as it's going to get. And those are still mass market things. So I think that actually I just never really was in a location where something blew up around me. I was inducted into the fandom of hockey, into the fandom of football, into the fandom of video games, into the fandom of role-playing games, into the fandom of G.I. Joe, into the fandom, like I wasn't first to any of this, you know?
Right.
So
Right.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I was just going to add on to what Dagan was talking about, in the sense that I know where you're going with the whole, like, you find something, it's your baby kind of thing. But like, for me, I think I resonate with that because I'm always kind of like the underdog guy. Like the guy, I don't like necessarily all the things that people find super popular. And sometimes I'm like, oh, this is the real thing right here. Nobody's not talking about this.
Yes.
So for me, I'll gravitate towards it. Now, I don't find myself gatekeeping it as much. It's more like I feel like I got to spread the gospel about this said thing, because this is really not getting enough attention as the mainstream thing. And I think it kind of permeates down to sports. It permeates a lot of my life. A lot of things. People like, I think I had a conversation with somebody. It was like, yo, you a hipster, bro. Like you like the opposite of what's popular a lot of the time, right? You always find yourself on the other side. Right. I don't know what it is.
It's your personality.
I know that. I think it's too, this is probably wrong to say, but I just feel like it's so easy to like the bigger popular thing. It's easy. Sure. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But like you like something, and then the last part I'll say is the beauty of it is when that little thing that you like that is not as popular does grow and get a little bit of attention, and you were like, yeah, I was there.
I told you.
Get it like that. Yeah, y'all just getting on to that now. But this, you know what I mean? Now I agree with you, Dagan, though. If it gets too big, then I'm like, I don't know if I'm like everybody. Like, again, it's this weird dichotomy. Yeah. It's stupid. It's nonsensical. It's just, I think it's just like an underdog thing, I guess. Yeah. And I do like to root for that, to see it succeed on some level. So yeah, I do understand where you're coming from on some
yeah, you make a lot of good points. I love calling it the underdog thing. Yeah, when it's just something about, you know, the very nature of something getting like overcooked. You know, it's like, oh, like my natural inclination is to want to find the next thing. I don't, you know, and again, like some of it I can't articulate. It just, I feel, and like, as I think back to even being like a young kid, like an adolescent, like I was already I think that's what probably drew me partially to skateboarding. It was like, oh, there's only 2 kids into that rather than 30 kids trying to make the baseball team. Yeah, let me look over here. You know, that was attractive.
Last point I'll say, I don't know if Gina probably appreciate this. You know, I remember like the cartoons, the famous stuff back in the day, you know, the G.I. Joe Transformers. Like, I was trying to put people on the Gatchaman and Battle of the Planets. Yes. I was like, this is amazing. Absolutely. I was like, I don't know you guys, they formed this ship and it's the Fiery Phoenix and they got the thing and these kids, and because nobody was talking about it. I just found it. And I just draw to something that I'm passionate about, and I gotta spread the word because I feel it's not getting enough attention.
Yes.
But I don't know how probably Gatchaman is like super popular, but for here in the States, when they did the dub and it was Battle of the Planets, you know what I'm saying? I found out the history was kind of hilarious. But I was curious, Gene, if you have similar things like that.
Yeah, I have a metaphor to kind of bring things into full circle, and it was inspired by Dagan talking about a friend of his recommending a band, just like, hey, you know, just check these guys out. There's something personal about you know, that word of mouth, as opposed to just something swamping the market with like this shit, like even The Last of Us or Marvel, right? Versus something word of mouth. There's something personal and intimate about like, hey man, just check this out. It's a little bit like sharing a joint with a friend, right? It's a little bit like sharing a joint. And you're like, hey, smoke this, right? And you share that experience together. But if there's too many people smoking out a joint, it's way too soggy. It's gross. It's a little gross. And you don't want to smoke it anymore. That's
people are so rude with that, man. Like, what are you doing to the blunt?
Stop licking it. Oh my god, dude!
Stop licking it.
It's so strange to me when like I smoke my joints, they're never wet. I don't know what people are doing where it's just it's unnecessary and stop putting it all the way in your mouth. What are you doing? I will say this as we exit, and that is a perfect full circle thing, and we'll exit on this. Is the one thing I will actively be gatekeeping is Jets fandom moving forward.
I was wondering about this with sports.
There's no way. Yep. I mean, there's no way anyone's getting on the bandwagon now, around me. This has been such a miserable experience being a Jets fan for so long. And I'm not saying it's going to turn around. I don't know, but there's no way you're coming on this fucking bandwagon now. I'm going to elbow you off. I'm going to fucking kick you off. I'm going to shoot you when you're down. No way, man. No way. I've watched every game. What'd you say?
I'm going to buy a Jets hat now. Just
next podcast.
I've watched every game every year for years and years and years. And these are like the moments that the potential of a moment that we wait for. So I'm pretty serious about that. I was pretty serious about that when the Islanders got good a few years ago too. I spent so much time watching Islander games, going to Islander games. It's miserable, horrible. And so I just want, so that does mean something to me. And so if there is a home playoff game, which I predict there will be this year, and I'm going to go to that playoff game, I'm going to be looking around. I'm going to be walking around MetLife. I'm going to be checking creases and jerseys. Where did you get this off? Did you just get this?
That brand, you don't want to see that brand. I don't want to see nothing.
Oh, that's interesting. No, just Johnny, get that out of an envelope. Ladies. You know, that I'm going to be walking around and be judging. And so that's going to be a thing.
Would people do that though, Kyle? Would people, like, first of all, would they just jump into a sport they weren't fans of? Would they switch teams just because it's going to be a winning team?
I don't think people. No. I don't think people necessarily switch teams. I think people engage and ignite either family or latent loyalties. Like you're a Yankee fan growing up, you stop paying attention to them, they become good, you engage again. Or you're not interested. So a team comes good, you become interested, or you move to a place. I mean, I lived in fucking Massachusetts when the Red Sox and the Patriots were both winning every year.
Moving to a place,
you know? And I was in San Francisco when the Giants were winning, and I was in LA when the Dodgers won, and all the other, and all this other stuff. And so, and you see these bandwagons, like Golden State is the biggest bandwagon I had ever seen in my entire life. I used to talk shit about it all the time when I lived there. It annoyed me. No one cared about the Warriors when I moved to San Francisco in 2007. No one. Like I always remembered Niners gear all the time and Sharks gear. You would always see less. You would see the Giants until they became good, and you would never see Warriors gear until they became good. And that always bothered me. So I think in sports fandom there is something, but I can't control that. I used to make fun of everyone when they liked the Heat during the LeBron era, and I would root against them every game I would watch. I'd be like, I hope this team loses. I hate this team because you just for that reason. And so, I'll be watching and monitoring the situation very closely with that, because I do think you have to earn your fandom. And I try in my own, we talk about it on Knockback, I try in my own life to be cognizant of that. I grew up a Yankees fan, and I was a huge Yankees fan growing up. I couldn't even name 5 Yankees today that are on the current roster. And I'm not going to pretend that when they win or make the playoffs, like it's really getting me amped. I didn't earn it.
Right.
I'm rooting for them. I'm in their camp, but I don't think it would be necessarily appropriate for me to go to a playoff game. You know, I think that would be a little weird. Because it's been years since I've watched the Yankees, right? And it's the same thing with the Nets. Like I am a passive. When the Nets move to Brooklyn, they're on the geographic Long Island. I'm like, sure, I'm in, and I'll be a Nets fan. But I pay attention to the standings and the box scores. But I would have no. You shouldn't talk to me about the Nets. I'm not a real Nets fan, and so I know my own place. But here with the Jets, oh my goodness, dude. I'm very, very excited. I'll be I'll be keeping a close eye, and I'll be fucking monitoring the situation.
I'm that way with the Mets because I suffered so much, and I'm just like, whenever the few years they're actually good, I'm like, let me see who's coming out to work now that the record's good and everything's rosy, or they got a big free agent signing or something. Yeah, you notice it.
It's although that people might jump off now with the injury that.
That's typical Met energy. We're gonna move on.
It's great. Cursed. The last time I remember a person hurting himself celebrating was when Martin Gramatica hurt himself, the kicker, probably 20 years ago, when he was celebrating a kick and then he fucking like pulled his ACL or ripped his ACL or whatever. It was like, geez.
Typical Met energy, Colin. It's disgusting. I'm just like, only this happens.
Yeah, it's for something like the World Baseball Classic, you know. It's like, okay, whatever. Remember when Mike Piazza played for the Italian team in the World Baseball Classic? That's still my favorite memory. I'm like, what? It's so stupid. This is so stupid. All right.
People see him a lot around here, by the way, because he owns all the car dealers. He's from the area, or he's from Jersey somewhere, not too far away. But he owns a bunch of car dealerships in the area.
I think
he has for many years. They'll be like, I saw Mike Gotts at the restaurant or whatever.
His mom's mom, I think, was from Italy, and so they're like, yeah, you play for Team Italy. Like, all right, cool. Playing a little fast and loose here, but all right, fair enough.
That was fantastic.
All right, my friends, let's get the hell out of here. It was good to see all of you. Let's go around for closing comments and salutations. We'll start with you, Gene.
Yeah, thanks again, gentlemen, for having me on. Happy to be part of the Last Stand Media orbit. I think it's super cool. I'm just a fan of this. Look, I didn't expect Constellation to hit with me either. I was like, okay, well, this is an interesting concept, and I started listening to it. And now I just sleep to it. It's fun.
Awesome,
it's great.
That's great. What's the sticker on your mic, by the way?
Oh, this is Fullerton. This is my alma mater, Cal State Fullerton.
Oh, cool.
Cal State.
Nice.
State school. I graduated college with no student debt whatsoever, and still somehow made it into the Washington Post. Everyone there has student debt. I don't have anything. I fuck with the system.
You live in the dream. You live in the dream.
Yeah, no, you're so interesting, Gene. I'm glad to have you. We'll have you back very soon. People have been asking for you. I'm glad to be able to deliver. Thank you for your time. Cog, closing comments.
Ooh. Another good constellation, man. I'm loving what you're building with this, and
thank you.
Just that train of thought, that consciousness, and how we could go off into some fun tangents. So I thought that was dope. Always good to see Dagan, my fellow OG as well. And G, welcome to the family, bro. Welcome to the family, man. A lot of fun seeing you. Very, very cool. And I'm looking forward to working with you more. So this is dope, as usual. Constellation, Colin, do your thing.
Cool, man. Thank you. And Dag, let's hear from you.
Yeah, thank you to all you guys. This is such a blast. I'm loving the show so far. And special thanks, of course, to Cog and Gene for coming on. I'm honored to have a conversation with you both. You're both killing it. And yeah, look forward to doing more.
Hope your neighbor doesn't listen to this.
Make sure she put the gun in.
I was just thinking that's like kind of a 3. I gave enough detail where it would be bad if her daughter, or my daughter listened to it. So yeah, I gotta be careful.
They're not going to listen to it. It's fine.
They can subscribe to Patreon like everyone else.
Yeah. They'll have to get that early ad-free access.
True.
All right, my friends. Well, I appreciate you, and I thank all of you out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand, Constellation, Knockback, Sacred Symbols, and Defining Duke, of course. Early ad-free access at patreon.com/laststandmedia, merch at laststandmedia.store, including free shipping on all domestic shipping for stickers. And we appreciate you there. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye. Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.